Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Irish Breakdown Podcast. I'm Vince, that's Brian, and it is that time. It is that day. It is upon further review. And, we had to make it a Sunday because that's just when we do
And
upon further reviews. I mean, it's
last, and I had to do one more show of 2023,
right.
man. I had to have kind of my final 2023 show, man. I couldn't avoid it. I had to do it. I'm
And
fired
it's
up,
the
ready
last
to
time
talk
we're going to
about it.
hear the theme music for 2023.
That's right,
And
man.
I'm fired up because, I'm fired up for multiple reasons. Number one, it's always fun to watch film back of a total butt whooping that occurred
Yes.
in this game. And so that was obviously a good time. And we're also going to talk about Xavier Watts and him coming back to Notre Dame. Made that announcement. Was it yesterday?
Last night. Yeah,
Was it last night? Okay.
Mhm.
Days are all running together. It's Christmas break.
Yep.
But he made that announcement with a cool video that Irish, media put together, Fighting Irish media put together. Him in the
We'd
desert
show
and
it
all
to you,
that.
but
Yeah,
I don't want to
it's
get the show demonetized
God,
again, so we
seriously,
won't do
God,
that. But
so dumb.
no, and they played off of the Sun Bowl
Yeah,
theme,
yeah,
like
yeah.
the Western, and they played that one at Dead or Alive stuff, which I thought was really cool. My only beef with the whole video is when they started showing his highlights at the end. Missed opportunity, not playing X gonna give it to you
Yeah,
during
no
that
doubt, no
highlight.
doubt,
Like
no doubt.
that's the only
Well,
one
they even
thing.
had the map that said X marks the spot. Like,
Yes,
come on,
X
man.
don't give it to
Like,
you. I mean, that's absolutely what the
yeah.
music should have been when when they were playing his highlights. But we expected it to happen. We've been kind of hinting that we thought it was going to happen, but
But it's nice to
still,
have confirmation.
yeah, man,
Yeah.
yes, yes,
There
yes,
was
yes,
multiple
yes.
times where I wanted, people are like, do you think he's going to come back? I'm like, yeah, he's going to come
Yeah,
back. But like, it's nice to actually have that out there and in the universe. And then we
yeah.
can all just talk about. So we are going to talk about what that means for Notre Dame after our upon further review. And so we'll see how that goes as well. So stay tuned for that. But of course, we are going to break down the film, or we've already broken down the film, but we're going to let you guys in on kind of what we saw and kind of where things were. A lot of positives, obviously. It's easy to have positives in a 40-8 victory in a bowl game. Notre Dame was dominant on both sides of the ball. A lot of fun to watch this one.
Mhm.
But as we jump into it, of course, there's pluses, there's minuses, there's guys that did better than we thought, guys that didn't do as well as maybe we thought on first round watching, that kind of thing. That's why we do this show. That's why this is my favorite show of the week, because I get to put my coaching hat back
That's
on
right.
for a little while and break down the film.
And
So
there's always going to be things that we're going to critique. That's never
always,
not going to happen. I mean, you're always going to have
always,
some of those things, and that's part of the fun of it. And I'll just say overall, Vince, the fact that there is a lot to clean up. I mean, because there were so many
oh
younger
sure,
players, it just shows like how good this team is and how well they play. But there's a lot to get
yes.
into for
Well, and there was, and this is both sides of the ball. There were a lot of rookie mistakes in this game, a lot of rookie mistakes, and those kind of mistakes are expected. Now
when
you
you
don't.
play a bunch of rookies.
This is what I'm saying. I mean, there were times where there were 5 or 6 true freshmen on the offense at
Vince,
once, I
there
think.
were times when there were 9
Yeah, right.
freshmen or redshirt freshmen on the field together.
9.
Most of the game
Yes.
was like, not most, because Jaden Thomas played a lot, but like basically when Jaden Thomas wasn't on the field, a lot of times it was because you had a true freshman running back that played a bunch.
Yep.
You had 2 true freshman wide receivers that played a bunch. You had a true freshman starting at left tackle, and you had a true freshman that played a bunch of tight end. And then obviously redshirt freshman, obviously Jadarian Price is a redshirt freshman, Jabron Payne's a redshirt freshman, Steve Angeli's a redshirt freshman. Um, Eli Raridan he's a sophomore, but he should be a redshirt freshman. He played one
Right.
game beyond the max. And then, of course, Billy Shrouth and Ashton Craig are redshirt freshmen.
Right.
So, I mean, they were even younger than they were last year when we talked about how young the offense was in the bowl game.
Which is crazy.
But we saw history too, Vince. I mean, it was the biggest
Oh yeah.
margin of victory in Notre Dame history in a bowl game. It marked the first time in Notre Dame history they've scored back-to-back. They've had back-to-back bowl games of over 40 points in a bowl game. And, so there was a lot
It's
to
the first
really,
back-to-back
yeah.
bowl wins since 13-14.
Yeah.
Like that's I had to sit back when you told me that one before the post-game show, and you're like, make sure you mention this. And I was like, has it been that long since they had back-to-back bowl wins? Like, that's crazy to me.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Well, I mean, and what's wild is Notre Dame has only ever scored 40 points in a bowl game once before, ever.
Once before these two?
Before these two. Yeah, and that was Hawaii back in
Oh,
2008,
not 08.
but they've
Okay.
never scored over 40 points in a game until like they'd only scored it once going into last year. Now they've scored it back-to-back games.
That's also the game where they started the current tradition of putting their names on the back for the bowl games too. It started in the Hawaii game.
That's awesome. Okay, I didn't know that. That's good.
Yeah.
So a lot to see, Vince. It was dominance in all phases of the
Yeah.
game. You're a missed field goal away from really just playing about as perfect as you could have hoped to play for considering the circumstances. And lot to be excited about from this game. And
No
it
doubt.
well, I'll hold off because we're going to do kind of a big picture view of it. But yeah, it's gonna
Yeah. No.
be no.
And we're talking big picture here, and I pointed something out to Brian since obviously he was at the game. He wasn't able to watch the TV copy. I was at home. I'm watching the TV copy. And one of the things that jumped out at me, and it's a total change. It's a change of culture from the last regime in that, yes, the score was 14-0 at halftime. Okay. That was the only part of the game that wasn't dominant was the actual score itself. Anybody that was actually watching the game knew that Notre Dame had that game completely under control and
Yeah.
completely in their hands. And they interview Marcus Freeman, and he's like, we've put a ton of energy and a ton of sweat and a ton of tears into this game, blood, sweat, tears. Like, we're not taking our foot off the gas. Like, we
Yeah.
are going to continue to push. And they put 26 on the board
Yeah.
in the second half. And so that tells me something. Like, he's not afraid to say it either, which I love that.
Yeah. I mean, just the big picture thing for me, Vince, was kind of along the lines of what you're referring to. I'm going to talk about the offense, defense. Notre Dame had more talent and all that stuff, and that was very true.
Sure.
But Marcus Freeman and this coaching staff had this team absolutely flat out ready to play this game.
Yep.
And you could see it pregame. It was, like there wasn't a lot of false energy. There wasn't a lot of, this and that. There was a lot of like, we're locked in and ready to go play. And a lot of positive energy, but not the emotional energy, right? Because emotional energy fades the first time you get hit in the mouth.
Sure.
The focused energy is what you want to see, right? Because I've seen this before. I mean, I'm sure you have in your coaching days. I still remember we were playing Averett College one time, and this little middle linebacker had led the league in time, just stood at midfield, just yapping, and then his teammates were yapping during pregame. And I'm like, do you not know who we are? Like, and I was like, oh, thank God. I said to someone in the locker room, I was like, the best gift they could have ever given us was that, because it was a team that we were going to blow out, or we should have blown out. But our kids had a bad week of practice. We knew they stunk, and our kids just weren't locked in that week in practice. And when these kids started yapping, it's just like, all right, that's a lot of, you're convincing yourself you have a chance in this game. And it ticked our kids off, and we came out there and absolutely destroyed them. And that's not what it is. It's the folk. It's the purpose. Everything you're doing is purpose. You're catching balls, you're catching it, you're locked in, you're looking it in. You're not just, la-di-da, catching it, going through the motions of pregame. A lot of focused energy. And it's hard to get a team focused in a bowl game like this.
Yes.
And I mean, we saw this last night in the Florida, yesterday, multiple times. I mean, Auburn wanted no part of playing Maryland in that bowl game. None. Florida State. I mean, Florida State was shorthanded, but like matter. That was worse than being shorthanded.
Yes.
That was shorthanded and a bunch of kids that did not want to be there.
Yes.
Like, just did not want to be there. And, and I know there was a lot of people at Notre Dame that were upset with the way the bowl thing happened, the way it went down, the fact that they got shipped to the sun. I know a parent that, like, I think it was like he bought tickets for him and his family for like 4 or 5 different flights and hotels, knowing that you could cancel them once the game was announced. Not one of them was to El Paso, right? Like, there was no expectation.
No.
But okay, get through it, forget it. We got a chance to go play a football game. And this team was locked in and ready to play.
Yeah.
And they were playing a team that was gonna be physical. And Oregon State played hard in this game. Like, that's the thing. When I watched the film, I was like, Oregon State competed, especially their front seven. They competed. It's just that Notre Dame was bigger, badder, and better.
Yeah.
And just there was no, they're missing all their players. We don't care. Oregon State's not that good. None of that. This was, we've got something to prove. And huge shout out to Coach Freeman for getting the team ready to play in an environment where it wasn't going to be as easy as you'd think to get this team ready to play. And you want evidence of that? Watch a lot of other bowl games right? And not all of them. I mean, I thought the Ole Miss Penn State kids, both of them battled their butts off yesterday. Ole Miss was just better. I mean, those are two teams that were clearly out to win it in that game yesterday. But that's the what, Cotton Bowl? Or not Cotton Bowl, Peach Bowl? That's a big bowl game.
That's a New Year's Six game.
I watched Ohio State's offense just look absolutely like they were just going through the motions against Missouri in the Cotton Bowl the other night. You know what I mean? And so for Notre Dame to get up like they did in the Sun Bowl was a huge testament to the coaches, but also the players to be locked in and stay focused. And then to your point, Vince, coming out in the second half, you're completely overwhelming this football team, and there was no let up. They put the second stringers in, and the execution wasn't as good,
right?
Which is why they gave up a touchdown.
Whatever,
but
yeah,
they played hard. I mean, they competed their butts off, and that's what you wanted to see. And so that was the first big takeaway from watching the film. I mean, you could see it live, but then when you pop in the film, it's like, okay, was just Oregon State kind of not wanting this? And you pop in the film, you're like, no, Oregon State played hard.
Yeah.
And it added even more to how well I think the team played. It really did, Vince.
It wasn't a situation like, when they beat up on USC a few years ago and USC wanted nothing to do with Notre Dame. Like, it wasn't that, like, there was no quit in those kids across the way. Like, that wasn't it at all. It was just Notre Dame was better. I mean, and it was across the board. And obviously we'll get into the details of that in just a second. But the fact that Notre Dame was better, that's happened in the past. Like, Notre Dame's been the better football team in the past, but not only
they got their 9 wins this year.
100%.
Honestly, they're just better than the teams they beat.
There's no doubt about it. But what I liked about them being the better team is they continued to be the better team from start to finish. They didn't, once they put Kenny Minchie in, they were just, running the ball, but they were running the ball with some purpose too.
Right.
Like, there was a little bit of a difference there. And so those seconds that were in, and sometimes thirds in this case, they were playing hard. And it wasn't a take your foot off the gas moment. It's just, hey, we're not going to throw the ball down the field like that kind of a thing, but we're not just going to run it between the tackles and go down after 1 yard and then punt the ball.
Yeah.
Like, they were playing hard, and there was that expectation. I purposely, when watching the All-22, Brian, was watching the sidelines, specifically the coaches, when the twos were in and towards the end of the game. Like, when Chase Ketterer scored that touchdown, like, 3 or 4 of the coaches that were in view were all like, like fired up. Like, I mean, they were coaching to the very end. It wasn't hey, let's take the headsets off and let's just, let's get the backups in and that whole thing. Like, they were coaching to the end, and the kids were taking the coaching to the end and playing their butts off. Yeah. And so and it wasn't just like that when the walk-on scored either. It was when they were still putting points on the board and they were in the 30s and they were doing, like, there was expectation on the sideline of, we're taking the ball and we're going to go down and we're going to score, And so that's, to me, sideline demeanor tells me a lot about what the expectation is on the field. And I purposely was looking at that my second time through as I was watching the game, my second time watching the All-22. You know what I mean? I was kind of taking the bigger picture look at it. And they were firing on all cylinders from beginning to end. And I really like that, especially as a springboard into the offseason, where a bunch of these kids that were on the field then are going to be competing for playing time moving forward.
A thing that I thought was interesting, Vince, is Notre Dame went 9-3 this season, and basically in the 9 games they won, they were just a more athletic team. Sure. They just had the better athletes, the better players. They didn't always win games because it was just a great game plan, or there were times where they weren't necessarily the more physical team. They just were the better team.
Right.
What I liked about this game is they were clearly more athletic than Oregon State. Like, there was an incredibly big difference in athleticism in this game. I mean, they're just talent and size. And I mean, Notre Dame just dwarfed Oregon State, but it was also Notre Dame was the more physical team.
Yeah.
And that is not always something that we've seen this season. And so it was great to be able to see that. And that was the first big takeaway that I had of the game, Vince, was yes, we expected Notre Dame to be more because I made this point in my solo show the other day when I did the prediction show. And the point I made was the reason I didn't think Oregon State had a shot to win this game. I mean, let's be honest. Let's not act like Notre Dame pulled off some giant upset that we didn't expect them to have, right? We all thought it was going to – we all predicted a double-digit win, and we all thought Notre Dame could win convincingly. I still didn't see like 40-8. I didn't see
Sure.
that coming. But the thing about it was like that you said that I said in the show, because there's an Oregon State fan in there who was really cool. Like he was really good. He was incorrect on a lot of things, but was really cool. And
Hey, that
you
happens.
know, but it does. I mean, he was totally respectful. It was a great conversation. This isn't a shot at him at all. But the
I
point
love
I tried
that.
to make to him was what you have to understand is Oregon State's missing guys. Notre Dame's missing guys. Notre Dame actually had more guys sitting out of the starting lineup than Oregon State did, but not by a ton.
Right.
But the difference is when Notre Dame loses Joe Alt, they're replacing him with Charles Jagasaw, and
Right.
Oregon State's not.
Right.
That's the big. I mean, both teams were missing their starting offensive tackles. Notre Dame was replacing their guys with two former top 100 recruits.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like that's the difference. When Notre Dame doesn't have Audric Estime, they're replacing him with Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price, and Jabron Payne.
Right.
That's the difference. You know,
Correct.
you
It was
don't
a-
have
it was a
Maris
battle of
Theophile,
death.
and
Yeah.
you put in Jalen Sneed,
Right.
who's a
Exactly.
former 5-star recruit. You
Right.
don't have Cam Hart. You put in Christian Gray, a former top 100 recruit, and Jaden Mickey, a 4-star top 250 recruit.
Right.
That's the difference. Is in some instances, Notre Dame put a more physically talented player on the field, just younger, or in other cases, a bigger player. Like, think about that. Notre Dame got bigger at left tackle after losing 6'8", 320-pound Joe Alt.
Crazy.
Like that. And that's the big thing. But they didn't just rely on being better. They didn't just rely on being more athletic. They came out and fought and competed. And here's the thing about Notre Dame. If they would have come out and competed like that every game this year, they're at worse 11-1.
Mm-hmm.
Because I thought they competed against Ohio State. They just didn't execute. They didn't compete against Louisville the way they needed to. They didn't compete against Clemson the way they needed to. They didn't compete against Duke the way they needed to. So to see them come out in this environment when there's really nothing to play for but pride,
Sure.
and see them play like that, that's a great sign about again, a little glimpse into hopefully what the character of this football team is going to be. And now we've got 8 months of enjoying a great finish. I mean, think about it, folks. Look, I'm going to do some math here real quick, Vince. So Notre Dame down the stretch outscored their opponents in the final three games, 141-38. And I'm just going to add it up with this calculator here just to make sure that I'm not. Yes, 141-38 is what their last three games of the year. So we talk about wanting to finish the season strong. That's an average margin. That's an average final score, Vince, of 47-13. That's how Notre Dame finished the 2020.
What a great springboard. I mean,
Yeah.
And then you add into that the excitement of the recruiting class that was just signed and the transfer portal wins that they had in the last, 3-4 weeks. I mean, there's not a whole lot of negative and the coaching replacements that they've been able to get, that they've had some unexpected and expected guys leaving, and the replacements that Marcus Freeman went out and got, the aggressive nature of which he had to get those guys and the aggressive nature of which he had to get those transfer guys in here as well. I mean, it's not a whole lot to nitpick at this point. We'll find some stuff. Don't worry. But I'm just saying the positive vibe around this program right now, both externally and internally, it's pretty stinking good. It's pretty stinking good. And it's a great way, especially if you're not going in, they didn't win a New Year's Six game. They didn't win a playoff game. We can acknowledge that. But this is the best case scenario for what was laid out in front of Notre Dame over the last month and a half.
Right. Based on how their season went.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. So excited. I'm excited about the future. I'm excited about the present, obviously. I mean, spring ball is going to be here before you know it, Brian. And we're going to be able to talk about what these guys are looking like on the field and what all of that, right? It's going to be here before you know it. And, but we're going to.
I mean, selfishly, Vince, though, before you move on.
Yeah.
Look, selfishly, it's a lot easier doing shows after the way they finish the season.
Oh yeah.
And we're going to do some season reviews coming up here next week, and we'll have plenty of that. And you and I got to get together on the schedule for what that's going to be. But that's going to be fun, and there's going to be some frustrating aspects of the season, right? I mean,
Right.
they weren't as good as they could have been. But to your point, it's how you finish.
Yes.
And how they finished is going to create a lot more excitement about the trajectory of the program, because we can say we can talk and chew gum at the same time, right? We can say this season should have been better, and it should have been better, and still say, but good Lord, they just shattered the all-time school. I mean, they just broke the school scoring record, and this record had previously been set by a team that Newt Rockne was a senior on, not a coach, but he was a senior player on the team that set the school record. And we're looking at saying, and you and I were joking about this, they should have been a touchdown better. Think about that, right? But it gives you something to be excited about going to the next season, because Notre Dame won 10 games this year. They scored over 40 points in 9 of them, right? There's a lot to build on, and now the key is going to be building on them. And the way that they won this game just really gives a lot of excitement heading into the offseason.
Oh, yeah. Oh, 100%. 100%. So, Brian, let's dive into the offense and what we saw on the review of the film. I'll tell you what, we talked about play calling, we talked about execution, we talked about all of these things in the post-game show, all of which still remain true, but with some tweaking and some nuance, I guess.
Well,
is the best way to put it.
I mean, you guys did a great job talking about it live. Obviously now we've had a chance to dive into the film, and so I have a lot of takeaways. And like the best way that I could describe Gino Guidugli's game plan and play calling, and this is meant 100% as a compliment,
right,
is it was conservative but not timid. And sometimes we think of the phrase conservative in an athletic standpoint as like a real big negative and real timid. And to me, you needed to come out and be conservative. I don't care what you think of Steve Angeli. If you think he's got a chance to be the greatest quarterback to ever put on a Notre Dame uniform, you do not throw him into game one and say, let's go on the attack and let's run up tempo and let's throw a million balls down the field and let's ask him to make all these full field reads. And you don't do that. You'd be setting him up to fail. You don't ask him to do that. They didn't put a lot on his shoulders.
Right.
And they said, hey, we need you to go execute what we do well. And we'll get into some of the specifics. But they also weren't timid in that they were not afraid to throw the ball down the field. They didn't ask him to do it a ton. And we'll get into the specifics of it later. But there were plenty of things built in that had some deep shots, like the first deep shot of the game. That was not meant to be a deep shot.
No.
But you had a clear out route that took the coverage off thinking you're going to get Jaden Greathouse open. They'd have made a mistake, and Steve went downfield and did what he needed to do, made the throw. And they did a lot of things where it's like, yeah, that's not a real complex play call, but that's smart and it's effective and it's allowing your players to be the dude. And I think the second part so that's a compliment, right? It wasn't timid. They were willing to take chances when they needed to. They were willing to attack some matchups that they liked. They left a lot of points on the field, to be honest with you. I mean, they should have had more than 14 in the first half.
Yes.
And so there were some execution things and all that. And you're not going to love every play call. And I didn't love the play calling in the last red zone where they got stopped on, not the last, but the late red zone where they got stopped at the goal line. And it's like, okay, you got a little too cute there. But you're always going to have things you nitpick and I would hope that Gino Guidugli's nitpicking little things he did in the game. But there was a lot that I liked. I thought they did a great job of using motions and shifts in the game. They did a lot of things movement-wise that not only helped the run game, but helped the pass game.
Sure.
Which we'll get into. But then, like I said, they also had some well-designed shots down the field. When Oregon State started getting a little bit creepy and coming down and getting a little bit too box-heavy, they called a couple double posts or smash or some things that got guys open down the field and said, hey, you better be careful, because if you guys think that you're just going to load the box all day, we're going to take some shots down the field on you.
Yeah.
And I was very pleased by it. It wasn't as creative as I kind of thought watching it live. I just thought that he did some really good things that got guys open, which is good. Sure. And it made it seem more schematically diverse than it was. And that's a compliment. It sounds like I'm kind of giving a backhand. I'm not. this is actually a good thing because they ran snag concept like 10 times, like the same, but they ran it. 90% of them were run differently out of a different formation, a different
Sure.
alignment, a different look, which meant you're stressing them in different ways. So there was a lot of things like that, Vince, that I liked in the game where, no, they didn't run a million concepts and Gino Guidugli wasn't showing to the world, like, look how smart I am and all these million but the way they got into stuff was super effective, and that worked in the game for me.
A lot of shifts, a lot of motions, a lot of moving guys around to create matchups that were in favor of Notre Dame, which I liked. But again, a lot of half field reads, a lot of single read situations for a quarterback making his first start. And you can fill in the blank with the name of whatever quarterback you want. It doesn't, this is not a praise of Steve Angeli. It is not a knock on Steve Angeli. It is, you got a quarterback making his first collegiate start ever. We're going to keep it fairly simple.
Right.
And you can tell when you watch the game, his head, for the most part, wasn't going side to side.
When it did, it ended with a sack.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. His head was, okay, I've got one read to make.
Yeah.
I'm watching one guy defensively, or I'm watching one concept, and whatever guy comes open, that's where I'm going with the ball. And that, in turn, led to Notre Dame showing take off. Exactly. There was one time he took off a little bit too early. We can get in, whatever, it's fine. One time when he turned into a sack, didn't need to do that.
We'll get into
those are all rookie mistakes. Like, I don't have a huge issue with that. Yeah. I really don't. But what I was gonna say was, when he had those single reads, when he had that one concept on one side where he's just a half field read, Notre Dame's players were doing a really good job of getting open at times and allowing that read to be much simpler for the first time starter. And then there were also times where Oregon State just flat out didn't cover. I mean, it was a coverage bust. But Steve Angeli did a good job of recognizing that and making the play.
I thought the coverage bust came from how the plays were designed.
Sure.
So like the first pass play of the game, they're in a 2x2 alignment at 11 personnel, one back, one receiver, or one back, one tight end, three receivers. And they just do something simple. They invert the line. Vince, we talked about this stuff all year about getting clean releases. Right. So Jordan Faison's on the line. They just do a short zip motion with Jaden Greathouse, and you get a vertical release from Jordan Faison, a little pivot route by Jaden Greathouse.
Supposed to be a clear out. That's supposed to clear the guy out.
Right.
And open up
both guys came down. Yeah. Angeli read it well and got. I mean, so it was if they'd have just ran that same play out of space, just hitch and a wide fade, it's covered. And it was covered later. They did it kind of similarly later, not with emotion, and Oregon State covered it well, and Angeli still got the ball out there, which we'll get into here in a few. But that's what I thought the pass game, Vince, did a lot of good things in that regard. Yeah. And so run game wise, that's the part I wasn't quite as impressed with, to be honest with you, game plan wise. I love the fact that they stuck so much to the inside zone. Yeah. But I thought some of the misdirection, the pin and pull stuff was a little telegraphed. You could tell that they weren't as effective doing that. But, they ran some duo stuff, some inside zone stuff. But what I did like, Vince, mentality-wise, they ran right into the teeth of the Oregon State defense.
Which was their strength.
And they said, stop it. And they couldn't.
Right.
I mean, even it was like 3-yard gain, 4-yard. I mean, there wasn't like a bunch of big gains, but it was just churning it out. 6 yards, 8 yards, 3 yards, 4 yards. I mean, just churning it out, man. And it be setting up the big play. I mean, the 55-yard gain came after they got the ball at their own 4. Mm-hmm. I mean, first drive of the game's 96-yard touchdown drive. Think about that. Mm-hmm. But it's because you got 6 yards on down one. Then you went 3, you get into 3rd and 1, you move the chains because you push them off the line, and then boom, now you have a little bit of breathing room. Now let's let Steve take this, take to the air, and then boom, game is completely changed after that. Because you even said to me when I was prepping with you for the post-game show, like, dude, that game was over after the first 2 series. Like, meaning one each. You're like, you just knew like they got no chance. Right. The only question was, what was the score going to be? Was it going to be like 24-10 like I predicted, or was it going to be what it became?
Well,
which
and
is a
that's
blowout.
why I texted Ryan on Notre Dame's second possession when they missed the field goal, right? And I was like, I told him he thought I was crazy, and he said in the post game show that he didn't text me back because he thought I was nuts. But I said if they score a touchdown there, the game's over. Like
Yeah,
that would have been the ball game. That would have been it. And turns out that was probably the case because of
yeah,
the way that Notre Dame was playing on both sides of the football.
yeah,
There was nothing Oregon State could do to stop either side. And it was very clear. And so it was just all
yeah,
about execution. And our guys are better than your guys, and a mentality that they weren't going to be taking plays
right,
off. They weren't going to be taking plays for
yeah,
granted, that kind of a thing. And it showed. It showed offensively. There's no doubt about it. It showed in the run game because I don't want to say Notre Dame wanted it more because that's disparaging towards Oregon State. I don't think that they didn't want it like that. That's not the feeling that I got from Oregon State. But their offensive linemen were better, and they were able to push Oregon State
yeah,
around enough that they were able to be successful on the ground. It
yeah.
wasn't the prettiest ground game for Notre Dame. It wasn't. It was not
But
pretty.
it
And
wasn't gonna be. I mean, this is the thing that we talked about,
exactly,
Vince,
that can't be the
before the game.
expectation. Yeah,
Their entire starting defensive line played in this game. And this was a defense, Vince, that had the 2 games in the middle of the year back to back that weren't very good. But then after that, they only give up 72.2 rushing yards per game in their other 10 games. They completely shut down Oregon's run game. Oregon has one of the best rushing teams and is one of the best running teams in the country this year. And Oregon State completely shut them down. And the defensive lineman responsible for that played in this game. And I'll get into that a little bit more when we break down the offensive line, but I thought they played hard. And I don't know that I'd necessarily say Notre Dame, like I get what you're saying, like pushed them around, but not in the way like they bullied some other teams that they played
sure,
this year. But
right,
they just battled.
yeah,
And that's what I liked about the game plan. It was that they started going to a little bit more pin and pull later, which I wish they would have maybe not done quite as much. But early in the game, Vince, it was, I mean, the whole first series, that's what was so
was no
dumb
pit and
about
pull. Yeah,
when they got in, well, until they got inside the 10 and then they
right.
called one. You're like, you're going to do it against a reduced look? That made no sense. It was like literally like 6 straight inside zones.
Yes. Yep.
And they just kept chunking them. I mean, just chunking them out. Right. I mean, and that's kind of what I really enjoyed from the performance in the run game, Vince. Just overall, I just thought the game plan was exactly what it should be with a young guy.
Right.
Schematically, not super diverse, but
Right.
we're going to give Oregon State a lot of things to think about pre-snap. And that was really well done by Coach Gaduli.
Because it did
Very
create
well done.
confusion. It did
Yeah.
create confusion, and it did create some coverage busts. And to the credit of Notre Dame, they were able to capitalize on those busts.
Mhm.
They were, for the most part, they were able to capitalize on those busts. There was a couple missed opportunities, but they were able to capitalize. So
Yeah.
that I appreciated very,
Yeah.
very much.
Very, yeah. Yeah, and the game plan did a lot of things to get ISOs, to get guys open. Like a lot
Yes.
of levels, they ran a lot of snag stuff. They ran some pivot smash stuff that got Jaden Thomas open on one. They
Mhm.
did some crossing stuff, which got Jaden Thomas open for
Stuff
another.
they've been
Should
doing.
have had another big play on that on one of the sacks, but
Yes.
but the other
Yes.
thing too. Well, let's hold on so we get to the receiver section. We can dive into the position groups because there's a lot of things I want to
Okay.
say
Yeah.
more about it that are more specific to the positions that we're
Okay.
going to discuss.
You want to start up front? You want to start with the O
Let's
line?
start with, let's go quarterback, running back,
Okay.
receiver. I want to save the O line for last.
Okay, quarterback, the man of the hour, Steve Angeli. Obviously, his stat line was good.
Yeah,
I mean,
very.
his stat line was good. Completed almost 80% of his passes. Was very efficient and left some stuff out there, which is crazy when you look at a stat line like that.
Yeah.
I mean, he exceeded my personal expectation from what I thought might take place from Steve Angeli. He did.
I thought the biggest thing for me, Vince, is so I wouldn't actually say that I was surprised how he played in the game.
Okay.
Because the one thing that I've always said about him, and in my opinion of Steve Angeli, has not changed at all.
Me neither.
But the one thing I've said about Steve Angeli is that's a kid that has never been in an environment that's too big for him. I mean,
Mhm.
I've been saying this since the first spring game he played in. Like Steve is a lot more confident in himself than I think he should be based on his God-given ability. And that's a compliment. I mean, you
Yeah.
need that kind of swagger. Steve thinks he's really good. And so when he goes into these moments, it's like the Sun Bowl. Like, I'm not worried about the Sun Bowl. I'm just going to go do what I do. And that's I actually expected that. And that's why some of the things I talked about in my keys to victory were like, you've got to win outside, because if you can win outside, I think they're going to be able to have some opportunities to throw the football. Because basically what they did is back to what you said earlier, is they didn't ask him to make a lot of complicated reads.
Right.
But he also didn't just take a bunch of checkdowns all game either. I mean, the first throw of the game was not a complicated read, but you have to quickly recognize blown coverage and get the ball out.
Sure.
And he did. I think that's where my surprise came from, was not that he made good decisions. I kind of expected that because they didn't ask him to do a ton. It wasn't that he was poised. I fully expected that. And I don't care if they were playing Bama. Steve may not play well, but he's not going to be overwhelmed by the moment. That's just who Steve is, right? That's the one thing I've always liked about him. But on that first read, it's like simple read, but you still got to see it and hit it before that safety got over it. Because the safety eventually recognized that there was a blown coverage, but it was too late. And so when you throw the ball with good timing, you're going to overcome sometimes maybe when you miss or aren't on point. And that's kind of what you saw from Steve in this game, is he was very decisive.
Yeah.
The pivot route for the touchdown, first touchdown of the game, they ran a snag concept, not a pivot, but a snag concept. Again, they ran that play. Half the pass plays were snag. Snag is essentially the outside receiver. Usually got two guys over. The outside receiver kind of work in and sit over top of where number 2 was. Number 2 will run a vertical route in some kind of corner or vertical, and then somebody from the number 3, a lot of times it was the back in this game, will run a quick slide route. And so what you're trying to do, exactly, you're trying to attack that flat defender, put him in a bind, and he either sits on the snag and then you hit the slide with room to run, or you hit the snag. And then if they play it double hard, then you can have the corner route behind it in a one-on-one against the safety. So first play, that guy buzzes out quick, Vince, and you talked about this. You're like,
and I didn't notice the back, by the way, on that particular play.
Yeah.
Like when I saw it live, it was like, where is this guy going? He's just going to the flat. It was like, because I believe it was their freshman linebacker, and he's like, I got flat. And he just went like right now. Now, there ended up being a guy out there that he had to cover. So I'm not going to – it worked the way it was supposed to, because they put that flat defender in a bind. He went to the flat to cover Jeremiah Love and left Jaden Thomas wide open. Yeah.
And so Steve hits him quick. And by hitting him quick, like as soon as the guy clears, the ball's coming out and he hits him. And the reason that mattered is because there was an inside linebacker that was coming over and dropping into that zone. If Steve gets that ball out late and there's indecisiveness, he probably still completes that throw, but Jaden probably gets tackled at like the 2. And you're third down, so you're kicking a field goal, it's 3-0. But by getting that ball out quick, he allowed Jaden Thomas to square the defense up and find a crease to get into the end zone.
Yeah.
That's why, was it a complicated read by Steve? No. Was it an easy read? Yeah, kind of. But still, for a guy making his first start, that was the decisiveness in which he did it, got it out there, got the ball to Jaden and let him score. It may not seem like a sexy read, but like that's a good read. That's doing your job. And he did his job well.
Doing your job.
They did a little sprint outlet, and I thought they did a great job of moving the pocket as well.
Because you and I have talked about this a lot when we've been at practice. One of the things that Steve does very, very well is throwing on the run. Like get him out in space, let him throw on the run. I've always thought that's where he actually
sees the game really well on the move.
Yes, he
does.
And
an example is the first ball he hit to Jaden Thomas might have been his second or third completion of the game, third or fourth completion of the game. And he's rolling out, and they were running. It was kind of like a different way to get into snag, but so you had a pivot route, you had a slide and like an option, and then like a deeper route. So it's kind of a levels.
Is this the one where Thomas came across the formation?
No. That's later. Okay. This one, he just ran a pivot route. Steve was rolling route, and he throws backwards. He throws behind, which you don't ever tell Gordon, don't do until they do it. And you're like, don't do that. Great ball. And that's what he did. But he felt it, and he knew it, and he went to it quickly. But when he needed to have patience, he showed patience, like he did on the one you're talking about, where Greathouse came on the double cross, and then he kind of came over, and he hit him in stride, and then he ran for 26. I'm not talking about that one. And so those are things that you saw. I thought they did a really nice job of moving the pocket and getting Steve out, and that added to the simple reads. I mean, look, he completed 15 passes. 12 of them were less than 10 yards down the field.
Right.
That
this is what it is. I mean,
right.
And this is
but he
where
got it out quick.
Right. Absolutely. Very decisive. And that is, I give Gino Guidugli a lot of credit here because he did tailor a lot of the calls to what Steve does well. Right. He knew he's going to be poised. He knew he's going to be decisive. He does well on the run. Like that was different than the way they would call a game if if Sam Hartman was running the show, right? And so I do give him credit for that. It wasn't complex, but it did complement what he does well. And so we haven't always seen that in the past.
Right.
Right.
And but here's the other thing too, is sometimes being decisive can overcome a bad read or maybe not getting the ball out where it should go. An example of that to me, Vince, was the throw to Eli Raridan on short yardage that almost got picked. If he gets that ball out a half a second later, it's batted down. If he waits a full second later, it's picked off and it's going back the other way. It was probably not the greatest read in the world, but he saw the guy and he knew, hey, if I get this out quickly, I can complete this pass. That takes him, like, again, it's a level of like, it wasn't a throw where he didn't see the guy and he got lucky. So I'm not saying that. It was, I see the guy. You probably shouldn't have made that throw necessarily, but he got the ball out quickly and it was like, okay, there you go.
Okay.
And then obviously Eli was able to make the guy miss and break the tackle and pick up the first down. So that was good too. And here's a final throw I want to talk about that I liked, and we'll talk about a couple of the mistakes and the misses. But the throw to Jordan Faison, if you go back and look at that throw, that was not a good ball. And it was
the one where it was juggled.
Yes, and then he caught it, the deep one.
Yeah.
And he's running a wide fade. That ball has to go here or here outside. He threw that ball inside. The corner actually had a chance to pick that ball off. Absolutely. A better corner might pick that ball off. But here's what I like about it. I liked the guts because here's the thing. Like, this is the kind of throw that we didn't see enough of in the regular season.
Agreed.
A guy's covered. It's a one-on-one. Give your guy a chance to go make a play.
And he was step for step. With Faison.
Yes.
That was about as good a coverage outside of the play of the ball on the ball, right? It was about as good a coverage as you could possibly have.
Right.
And Steve's like, yep, I like my guy here.
Exactly. I'm giving my guy a chance. Yeah. And Jordan made the play. Now you're going to go back and say, Steve, I don't mind the read at all. The ball placement's got to get better. And that's kind of always an issue with Steve. That's one of my big concerns with him. And we'll get into that a little bit down the road is, that ball placement on some of those deep shots was not good in this game. But I'll take a guy that's willing to maybe I have to work on the ball placement, but you're willing to take those chances than a guy who just won't throw it.
Seen that before.
And that's the thing that I really liked from what we saw from Steve is like there's a willingness to make those throws. Now you just got to do a better job of hitting them when they're there because some of his mistakes were part of what left points on the field. Right. I mean, you look at the miss to Eli Raridan. They ran a smash concept. He made the right read. Eli Raridan is there. Steve just threw it high and over top. He needs to throw that ball on a line and out near the sideline.
He might have scored. Like
that. Might have scored at the very least. He's inside the 10 to probably 5, on that particular play. And, it just his downfield ball placement wasn't great on the one catch. I mean, the one he completed, 3 balls he went 3 of 5 on throws 20 yards or more. One was a slightly underthrown deep ball, which I didn't mind it because the guy's wide open.
And the first one.
Yeah, guy's wide open. Get the
ball. It was
ball
underthrown because he had to slow down and kind of catch it on his hip.
But I kind of was okay with it because you get amped up and try to lead him, and then all of a sudden you overthrow him. Just get the ball out there.
Just get it out there. Yeah, absolutely.
You had the ball to Matt Salerno that was really low, and Matt had to go down and get it, which was a great catch by Matt Salerno, by the way.
Yes, it was.
And then you had the ball to Faison that got caught. That honestly, a better corner. If you make that throw against Benjamin Morrison or Christian Gray, that's getting picked off. I mean, it just is.
Yeah.
And so, but he had the guts to make it. Then you had the miss to Raridan, and then you had the miss on the post route. where if you throw that ball where it's supposed to go, that's a touchdown. Now, I believe they still scored on that drive, or was that the field goal drive? I'm trying to remember which one that was. Was that the end of the half play? Let me go find it.
I'm not 100% sure, but here's what you're saying, because you can't see it on the TV copy. Faison had his man beat by about 4 yards on that particular play. Like, he had him beat.
When the guy was
running post. All you had to do on that one is throw him open. As we say, throw him open. Throw it out there. Let him run underneath it to catch a touchdown. There was no deep routes on the right-hand side of the formation. It was clear sail. And if he puts the ball on the right quarter of the end zone, Faison runs right underneath it and for a touchdown. No question. But he threw it behind him. He threw it on a line. He threw it behind him. Faison had to stop, come back, basically turn himself into defense, because it probably should have been picked off by the safety, to be honest with you. But that's 2 throws
way behind.
Probably should have been touchdowns, if not a touchdown one that sets up another touchdown. So, again, is it nitpicking? Maybe. But
no, it's not nitpicking. I mean, that's what you need to
but
do.
It's also the issue that we have with Steve in general is ball placement.
Right.
I mean, those are plays that you have to make in games that are close. You know what I mean? You've got to make that play. When you've got a kid, look, Jordan Faison played exceptionally well in this game. We're going to talk about wide receivers. But
they scored on that drive, that play. Okay. It was the one where they hit the little sit down to
Jeremiah Love
to Faison.
Oh,
he ended up catching the touchdown.
Where he goes in. Okay, gotcha. So he even got his at that point anyway. But like, you got to make that throw.
The Mr. Raritan was on a drive where they ended up settling for a field goal and missed it.
Yeah,
that kept points off the board.
The second drive. Okay,
right. And and again, you were able to get away with it in this game.
Correct.
Against a team that had the number 84 pass defense in college football and was missing half their starters.
Correct. In the secondary.
Yes, in the secondary. And those are the mistakes you can't make. And that's always been the issue.
Correct.
Ball placement has always been the issue with Steve.
Right.
And that's something he's going to have to continue to work out, because your guys made plays for you. But the thing is, though, is I'll take that. But that confidence can help you, because he's still willing to take those shots. And when you have really good players, sometimes they're going to make you right. And that's where I wish Sam Hartman would have done more of this year.
Trust his guys.
Trust your guys.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Trust your guys.
Completely.
And so that was an aspect of it. And, again, we didn't see any intermediate. There was no completions between 10 to 19. There's only 2 attempts between net 10 to 19. Everything was short or deep. That's kind of what the game plan was. And the deep shots were all one-on-ones. And so that's a good game plan. So, Steve, he managed the offense very well.
Yeah.
He did what he needed to do. He was decisive. He was accurate on the short stuff. And he didn't turn the ball over. Almost did, but
a couple times,
put the ball on the ground. But he was, and he also made plays with his legs. That's the other thing too, Vince, is, it was more of a, if that read's not there, go. Right. I mean, that's the other thing that I liked in the game too, is they put him in those situations. But overall, it was a quality performance by Steve. He did what he needed to do. They didn't ask him to make a ton of plays, but he still made some.
Yeah.
It wasn't like he just game managed and didn't make any plays. I mean, he converted a 2nd and 15 with his legs.
Yes.
He made the
dropped
read.
His shoulder on that kid, man.
Well, they blew a coverage. I've seen blown coverage where the quarterback doesn't see it and still throws the football, and they don't get the big play. He saw it and hit it. And we can't blame him or fault him for them blowing a coverage that they did, and he took advantage of it. Right.
Right.
And so, liked the things that I saw in this game from him. It's kind of what I expected he would do from a poise standpoint. He was a little bit more decisive than I thought he was going to be, which was good. And the game plan was really sound, and he executed it at a pretty high level.
Yeah.
And against a team that was not very good defending the pass to begin with, it was a smart game plan, and Steve took advantage of it. And like you said, we'll get to the other guys here in a little. Actually, let's just do the receivers now, since it kind of goes with them.
Yeah.
Because that was the big thing. Is Steve showed a lot of confidence in his receivers, and they rewarded him for him. He's got, hey, I'm gonna get the ball out. You go do what you got to do.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guys making plays after the catch. The scheme helped with part of it. This is and somebody said in the chat too, it was visibly different watching the receiving corps in this game.
Yeah.
right? And they weren't perfect. There's some times where you got to do a better release off the line, but overall the releases were better. The top ends were crisp in this game, Vince, for the most part. They competed for the football. It was a very sharp game by the wide receivers, and
No
they
doubt.
blocked pretty well too. So I was very pleased with what we saw. I mean, just the patience they showed. Jaden Greathouse wasn't getting the ball a ton, but when the ball came, he was ready for it. Made a play. Jordan Faison had a lot of opportunities to make plays. He did, and you can just see when you use Jaden Thomas correctly, and they did. They hadn't done a lot of that all year. He's a really effective weapon.
Yes,
on the short to intermediate stuff.
I remember thinking to myself as I was watching the game live and as I was watching it back was, man, I wish he was healthy all season. I mean, because he's a gamer. He does well. I mean, he's a guy that you can trust. I think he would have become kind of a go-to guy for Sam Hartman if he was available all year long, and he just wasn't. And that stinks. I mean, he was the leader of that room, I think, both in play and in leadership, and he just wasn't healthy. And seeing a healthy Jaden Thomas in this game was refreshing. It was like, man, I wish he was around all season, but I'm really looking forward to how Mike Denbrock decides to use Jaden Thomas in the offense next year. And I'm hoping that he's healthy all next year as well. And then another point I wanted to make after watching it back was Jaden Greathouse. That kid was, even though the ball didn't really come his way a bunch, and some of that was by design, some of that was by the fact that the other team knew that probably was going to be the case, and they were focused on him a little bit more, which allowed Jordan Faison to do some of the things that he did. Okay. But he was dialed in the entire game. The routes that he was running to get other guys open, whether that was the plan or not, was awesome. And like the first pass of the game, pretty sure that was probably going to be intended for Greathouse, right? He sees the ball go over his head. He turns around. He sees Jordan Faison wide open. The first thing he does is he puts up his hand like this, and he's like, yeah, and then he starts running after the play. Like, he is bought in 100%.
They all were. I mean, I think Jaden Thomas was more excited about Jordan Faison's touchdown than Jordan Faison was.
Seriously. Yes.
Like almost jumped and tackled him. I mean, they played with confidence. And that's what it comes down to. This was a confident group. They weren't being beat down every day. They weren't, there wasn't all the drama. There wasn't, hey, we're going to teach y'all how to play the football game. And they went out and played.
Yeah.
And, Deion Colsey played a lot in the game, didn't get any targets, but then he's a junior, former 4-star, top 100 type of kid. And he's out there blocking his butt off and talking trash to the Oregon State kids on that last touchdown drive.
Yes, he was.
Which I freaking loved. Yes. I loved because he was bought in. He was invested. I'm out here. I don't care what my job. I haven't played in a long time. It's been a long time since Deion was on the field. You could see he wanted the football. And a receiver should want the football. But he didn't go out there and go through the motions and just jog off the line and just get hands on. He was hitting dudes. And you're just like, that's a group of guys that's bought in. Matt Salerno got one target the whole game. That's it, one target.
He ran his.
He made a great, ran a good route. They did a clear out by number 2. Number 1 comes inside. Steve drives the ball down. Matt's got to go down and make a play on it. I mean, he should have hit him in stride. If he hits him in stride, he catches it and probably goes and scores.
Right.
And again, that's
and the one sack that Angeli took.
Oh yeah, I forgot to talk about that one.
Man.
Well, that was Greathouse. I thought.
Was it? I thought Salerno
was Salerno.
But he had
either way. First of all, he had the back wide open. He should have hit the back.
That's true too.
That was leverage. Yeah. But I also thought that Gino did a good job of doing things to get the receivers open as well. And that's what I want to talk about that. And here's an example of it. Is obviously the pivot stuff. That's right up Jordan Faison's wheelhouse. So the thing about Faison that I think this game showed people is there were some that thought Jordan Faison was he's every bit as fast as Chris Tyree. Not even close. Not even close. Mm-hmm. He's a 4.5-ish kid. He's super sudden and explosive and quick. And that's what you saw in this game. Now he's fast, Vince, but not what you'd think for a guy of his body type and the quickness and explosiveness. He doesn't have true burner speed. He's got good speed. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we saw that on that backside post route against Wake Forest that got Jaden Greathouse open. But he's not like a burner like Tyree is.
Right. No, I agree with that.
But what he has is he's got great suddenness. and shiftiness. And that's something that Chris didn't have. So like those pivot routes are super sharp and sudden. And so he gets so much initial separation on those type of routes. And Gino played to that in this game. Like Coach Gaduli played to that in this game. And that's what you want to see is like, this is what his skill set is. Let's put him in position to utilize that skill set because he gets so much initial separation out of those cuts, those pivots and the double moves and stuff like that. It was really impressive to see that. And then, of course, he's got great focus on the football when the ball's in the air, which he showed in this game as well. I mean, if he doesn't make it, like, attack the football. If Jordan Faison does not stop his body as best he could and turn back to that post route, it's picked off.
100%.
And we saw way too much of that during the season where guys wouldn't fight back to the football and allowed balls like that to get picked off. And so that's a play where, like, it wasn't a play, but it was a play. And as I said, that drive ended with Jordan scoring a touchdown.
Right.
Made it 24-17 or 24-0 instead of 17-0. And then Oregon State gets the ball back because they just picked it off. Maybe they get a little momentum and then they're one big play away from all of a sudden it's a ball game again. And so that was there. But another example is something that doesn't seem complex, but it's really smart. They faced a 3rd and 3, and it was on the last touchdown drive of the first half. It's 7-0, Vince. And you're like, this game should be like 21-0 right now. And it wasn't. It was 17-0 or 7-0. And you're kind of letting them hang around a little bit. And so they go 12 personnel on 3rd and 3, and they put the trips into the boundary. And they motion across and run a quick sprint out, roll out with a quick out by Jordan Faison because it was smart for 2 reasons. Number one is when you go motion across and you're going to run that kind of route, it's hard to chase. So you either need to come down or chase over. Well, if it's come down, it's a safety, and that's a matchup you like. Oregon State didn't react quite well enough to it. They tried to come down post-snap, and they just weren't fast enough to get to Faison as quickly as he got out there, and Steve hit him on time. It was a great play call. It was simple, but it was intentional and purposeful. We know how they're going to defend motion in this situation.
Right.
And so what they did was because it was 12 personnel, they put both tight ends to the boundary with Faison initially, which meant they were going to load their defense down to that and play it that way. And it was a really well-designed play call. But when you've got a guy like Faison that's that quick out of routes, and Steve got the ball out as soon as he broke outside, there's just no chance on that type of route. So I thought that they did a good job of putting those guys in position to make plays as well.
Yeah.
And any of them could have had a big day. There was multiple
absolutely.
times that Great House was open down the field. And it's not that Steve was wrong. Like, oh, Steve should have thrown. No, the read never took him there. But if it did, Great House was going to be open for some plays. Right. So that's why you can never just completely judge a guy's performance by his numbers, because sometimes your numbers can be misleading. The opportunities have to come, and they didn't come. Jaden Thomas didn't stop getting open in the second half. Just the opportunities weren't there like they were in the first half. I just thought overall, I thought the receiving corps played well, blocked well, sharp routes.
You can just tell there was just a different feel.
Confidence.
Yeah, it was just completely different. And if I didn't know any better, I would have said there might be a new coach there, because it showed. Like they just played with a different level of confidence. They were playing for each other. They were playing for their team. They were playing for themselves. I mean, all of the above. And it's okay to play for yourself. Like I want to be clear on that, but they were playing for each other as well. And it showed. It just absolutely showed. And it was fun to watch. And it also allowed Steve to play at his best, because he was throwing to guys that were getting open. You know, I mean, and he also had faith in those guys because of the way that they've been practicing over the last 3-4 weeks as well. That's
and his
why
decisiveness allowed them to stay open and make plays after the catch. I don't want to completely take it away from Steve, because sometimes guys can be open. If the ball doesn't come out on time, they'll still catch it, but they're getting tackled as soon as.
But it builds on each other, right?
Exactly.
Like the confidence that Steve had, part of that's because of the confidence he had in those receivers. And I think we questioned that at times with Sam Hartman. I'm not sure he had a ton of confidence in his receivers at times during the season.
Coach Gaduli made this comment during the coordinator's press conference a couple days before the game. He said, what you got to understand is Steve's been playing with these guys all year. Like, he's been playing with Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price all year. He played with Jordan Faison first half of the year. They were the number 2 offense. So he's thrown a ton of balls to Jordan Faison. He's thrown a lot of balls to Jaden Greathouse. He's thrown a lot of balls, to the running backs, to Eli Raridan, to Cooper Flanagan, because they were with the number 2s all year together. And that you could tell that there was a rapport there that you may not expect for a starting quarterback being thrust into the lineup with the guys that have been starting all year, the first team. He hasn't thrown as many balls to Mitchell Evans before his injury. He hadn't thrown as many balls to Holden Stace, but he's thrown a bunch of balls to Eli Raridan and Cooper Flanagan. Matter of fact, he's thrown a touchdown pass to Cooper Flanagan already this year. So, those things factored into it as well. But the receiver play I thought was very, very good. Let's talk running backs too, Vince. This is probably the best group that Notre Dame had on Saturday, in my opinion. And I thought the running back performance was like the production in the run game was better than the way the run game was blocked and designed.
Correct.
And it's because of how well the running backs performed. Even like Jeremiah Love, whose numbers weren't very good. He had like 39 rushing yards and like 15 carries. There were 4 carries that he had where he should have lost yardage.
Yes.
But he made guys miss or made cuts that allowed him to get in the hole. And I thought Jadarian Price was exceptional. And Jabron Payne played well.
Yeah, also. Even having a Wildcat at one point.
Yeah, Devin Ford comes in at the end and rips off big runs. And it's just like the running backs, man, it's like if there's a running back coach of the year award, I don't know if there is, and Dylan McCullough didn't win it, it's a joke in the award. And now I know why the award's irrelevant. Nobody talks about it because the job he did this year with this group was phenomenal.
Yeah.
This is only going to get
stronger as they go forward.
Let me say something to y'all again. There was a 2-game stretch in the middle of the year where they gave up over 200 yards in back-to-back games. Oregon State. In the other 10 games, they gave up 72.2 yards per game. Notre Dame went for 236 on them. Only had one long run all game. Like the second longest run of the game was like Steve Angeli 16-yard scramble, right? It was a bunch of 6s and 8s. But there were so many times, the first drive of the game, they run inside zone. It was the play that Jeremiah Love ran to get him inside the 10. There's literally a guy out there on the perimeter on an inside zone. He was forced to bounce it because the backside got beat up the field. He was forced to bounce it. There's a guy standing there on the edge, standing there, waiting to tackle Jeremiah Love. And he just shakes him and runs right through the arm tackle and picks up 9 yards.
Yeah.
And you're like, dude, that should have been a -2. At the very least, it should have been a +0, +1. You know what I mean? On the stat sheet. But he was so explosive and so quick that the guy just looked silly. Made the guy look absolutely silly on that play, Vince. And you're just like, that shouldn't have been there. There was an inside zone cut that Jadarian Price had and went for like 6 yards. But it's like the center got beat up the field and the guard got beat outside, and he just kind of jump cuts it and explodes to this little tiny crease for like 6 yards. You're like, that should have been a -2. The duo run that he bounces outside for 13. You're like, dude, that should have been a -1. But it's just like he reads it, he makes the first guy miss, then has that little quick jump cut outside to make a second guy miss, and then just outruns the defense to the sideline. And you're just like, man, these guys are really good.
Yes.
Really good. Devin Ford made a similar run like that later in the game too, for his long run. And you're just like, man, these guys, this isn't to say they're better or worse than Audric. It's just the speed difference with these guys. And you understand why they ran so much inside zone. It's just hand the ball off and let them find a hole. That's really what the game plan was. Let them find a hole, get a body on a body, and let those guys go play. And they did. And the game plan showed no more greater confidence in any position group than it did the running backs. That's exactly why they did what they did. Now, I wish they would have done more to get Jeremiah Love the ball outside and all this, other, which we'll get into.
Sure.
But the way that these kids played, even Jeremiah, who didn't have sexy numbers at all, it's like, boy, there was a lot of maximized yards in this game. A lot of maximized yardage opportunities in this game. I thought the backs were exceptional. And this is exactly why, Vince, every time the show starts talking about how great Jeremiah Love is going to be, I'm like, yes, I agree, but don't forget about Jadarian Price. How many times have I had that with my other compadre I do shows with? I always want to talk about Jeremiah Love, and for good reason. And I'm always like,
sure,
this ain't gonna be the Jeremiah Love show next year by himself. And the thing I was told is that the pitch to Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price this offseason has been 1A, 1B. It's not trying to convince one you're the guy to say it's like you got, and they bought in. They've bought into it, and you could see it in the game on Saturday that they both were bought into what the roles were going to be.
Totally.
And there's going to be games next year where Jeremiah goes for 13 carries and 120 yards, and Jadarian's the grinder, 15 yards for 39 carries kind of thing, right? I mean, that's just how it's going to be. In this game, it was Jadarian that had the hot hand, and then they rode it, and they ran exceptionally well. I was so impressed. I have an article up today talking about it, and we'll dive more into it in the offseason, but it speaks volumes that you can lose a guy like Audric Estime, who was phenomenal this season. Phenomenal. Set a Notre Dame scoring record. Fourth or fifth best single season rushing record of all time at Notre Dame history. Over 6 yards a carry. And you're like, they're going to be fine. They're going to be okay. Maybe even be more explosive when you consider that the speed that these guys have and the fact you have Riley Leonard taking some of the pressure off of him with his legs. Because these running backs, Vince, I thought were just absolute dudes.
Oh, they made plays all day. I mean, they made plays all day. Both guys did. And it don't, you could look at the final stat line and that's great. But like you said, they both made plays in the hole. They both made plays where there was one of the big runs that Price had. It was just super calm, waited in the backfield, and then as soon as he saw the hole, because it was a pin and pull situation, and as soon as he saw, and he's like, just hit the hole, just hit the hole hard. And it's funny.
Are you talking about that vertical cut right to left?
It was left to right is where he went, and it ended up being, you know what? I don't know if it was a pin and pull. I think it was actually an inside zone because Coogan actually comes down. He ends up sealing it.
No, there was a pin. There was a counter play. But no, it was a different one. He made so many cuts like that. But there was another counter play, Vince, where he just was patient. They kicked out, and he just creased it behind the cut, the plant, and just got like 8 yards. It was just like, oh my gosh.
I mean, he did a great. His vision, a couple days ago was just really, really good. He just had a really good feel for the way that game was going. And that's a big part about being a running back, is having a feel for the game. Like his feel for where these holes were going to open up and where things were going to be was just really, really good. Because on the TV copy, you kind of lose him in there, and then all of a sudden he just bursts out. But when you get to watch it, from the end zone view, it's like, okay, I see what he was doing there. He was just waiting for it to kind of the seat apart a little bit and then just burst through. And he just did a really, really good job of that. And I'm not going to retread everything you said about Jeremiah Love and what he was able to do, making guys miss and all that, because it was obvious and it was really, really good. But both of these guys are best friends to an offensive line, because when they're not at their best at times, right, they're blocking their butts off, which is why some of these creases, by the way, opened up late, because they didn't necessarily get to the right guy and get the right angle and do all that. But the way that they kind of got there, and then they adjusted their body and they created those holes where I'm not sure the hole was actually supposed to be there. Yeah. And then the running back hit it for big yards. Like, that's, like I said, a running back who can do that, who can feel his way through it, is the best friend to an offensive line when they're not necessarily at their best. And I think that epitomizes kind of what went down in this bowl game. I really do. I'm not taking anything away from the offensive line. They played hard. They played really, really hard. But these running backs made them look even better because of their patience and because of their feel of the game.
Well, and it's not a coincidence that Jeremiah Love's two most impressive plays were an off tackle. It wasn't off tackle, but it hit off tackle. It was an inside zone, but it hit off tackle. Yeah. And then the catch where he's in space. And that was the one big disappointment for me in this game plan, was they should have done more to just get him the ball and just go. Yeah. I was disappointed we didn't see any 21 personnel or 20 personnel where
that's a missed opportunity.
You utilize that. I mean, you could have done some things with your inside zone, even on jets, hand a couple jets off, but then also those jets become smokes where you create hesitation with some inside zone. I'm really hoping that we see some of that from Coach Denbrock next year. Yes. But, then of course, Jeremiah caps things off with the first team offense by that quick catch and slide, makes the first guy miss and jukes another guy. And you're just like, you got to get that guy in space more. Just have to get the guy in space more. And, but I thought they were, and Jabron Payne played well in the game.
Yeah.
Kevin Ford came in and ripped off some big ones.
Top to bottom, the running back
yeah.
room played well. I mean, and then you bring in the 2 walk-ons, and they both get positive yards. One gets a touchdown. So
right.
I mean, they,
Chase Kidder is a good football player.
Oh, dude, I saw him in high
that's
school.
A really good football player.
He's a really good footballer. He'd be on scholarship in a lot of places.
Well, especially at the FCS level. Like if I'd have had a guy like him when we were at Duquesne, and we had a 1,000-yard running back, Mike Hilliard, but like that, he would have been a dude.
Yes,
for us. Like that's a good football player.
No doubt.
Yeah,
no doubt about it.
Yeah, and he was actually funny thing. I was down on the field during pregame, Vince.
Okay,
he was actually the emergency quarterback in the game.
I heard about that.
Yeah, so I'm watching warm-ups, and he's taking snaps with Joe Otting, and I'm like, all right. So this kid can really do everything. You know what I mean?
Oh, and it's what he was in high school. Is he was a quarterback. It was obviously a triple option offense, but he was a quarterback, and they were very successful at throwing the football because not only could he run the ball well, but he could throw it too. And it wasn't necessarily something that they did a lot, but when they did it, it was super, super effective because he was throwing to wide open guys. I mean, you know how triple option works, right? But he was able to get the ball to those guys, and where the successive guys after him haven't had that kind of an arm, and so they've been able to be shut down a little bit more.
Right.
He was a literal dual threat guy in the backfield and just ran the ball so hard. They would, Brian, I know I'm getting off topic here, but they would put 10 guys foot to foot on the line of scrimmage and just have him in the backfield and just snap him the ball.
Yeah.
And he would find a crease and just go 80 or something. I mean, it was unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Let's move on to the O-line, Vince, and talk about the play of the offensive line, because it was not as good on the rewatch as it looked live. And we'll explain why. Number one is there was what I want to talk about the good first. Here's why it looked better than it actually was, because what wasn't good enough is there's a lot of technical stuff that wasn't very good in this game. So looking at it from a coaching standpoint, a lot of angles that need to get better. Footwork needs to get a lot better. Hand play wasn't always good. Assignments weren't always right where they needed to be. But here's what I loved. We'll get to the stuff that needs to get better, and there was a lot to evaluate. But this group came out and played hard. They battled, and we had an IB get together, which was great, by the way. And thanks to everyone that was at that on the night before the game. But Randy Hernandez, Vince, who we've seen do a lot of super chats in the past. You remember Randy? Randy made a comment. He's like, how this line plays tomorrow. And I had said this in the show earlier in the week too, but Randy said this line plays is going to tell us a lot about next year, because Oregon State's entire starting defensive line was back and they were very good. This is a team that finished 6th in college football in sack, or 10th in college football this year in sacks per game. And all their top sack guys played in the game. And the 2 sacks they had, one of the 2 sacks they had was as much a coverage sack as it was anything, and Steve not getting the ball, throwing the ball away. But the pass pro was pretty good for the most part when you consider the quality of the pass rush they were going against.
Yeah, quick guys. They're undersized. But quick.
Andrew Chatfield. I mean, like you watch the game and you're just like, this guy's just getting overwhelmed. And so when I watch the game, Vince, it's like that. Just you have to appreciate the total overwhelming of just physical overwhelming that they had of this offensive line. If you look at the Pro Football Focus numbers, again, this is a team that was 10th in college football this year in sacks per game. They only had 4 pressures the whole game. 4. That's it.
That includes
2 sacks, 1 hit, and 1 hurry.
Okay, I was going to say
2 sacks, 1 hit, 1 hurry. That's it.
Yeah.
And I mean, there was plenty of times Steve had plenty of chances to sit back in the pocket and throw the ball down the field from a clean pocket. And then run game wise, part of the thing that they did well is they made a lot of mistakes, but their mistakes were physical. They made them physical. When they would mess up, they'd still mess up going hard. And there was times like no lineman's kind of getting knocked back, and then the running back would make a hit off of him because the lineman would stay engaged. And even though he was losing the battle, he was still battling, which kept the guy occupied and allowed the running backs to go out and make those plays. And so, like, even the things I didn't like, you're like, there's promise there because they fought their butts off. And as the technique gets better, and we'll dive into some of that, that's what excites you, Vince, because you had a true freshman, 2 redshirt freshmen in the game. That's young. Charles Jagasaw had a really rough start to his first start. Like the first series, I mean, he got flat knocked on his butt on the first play. Like he realized, okay, I'm strong, but they're 4 years in a weight room strong.
They're men.
Right? They're men.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there were some times where Charles got knocked down, but you know what I loved? Always got back up, and the next play, he would kind of play with a little bit of P and V, man. And as the game wore on, he got better and better and better. And by the end of the game, he was their best offensive lineman, I thought. I mean, that's something. I don't know if you agree with that or not, Vince, but I thought after the third series on, I thought their most dominant lineman was Charles Jagasaw.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? I thought
we're going to
Tosh
get into
was
the
probably the most
stuff,
steady.
Yes, I agree with that.
I thought Tosh was real steady.
I was impressed with Tosh. Like I wasn't sure what to expect from him in his first really, full game since he got benched, for, when Joel came in.
We got hurt.
What I mean?
Got hurt.
Yeah, he got hurt. Okay. But like, it wasn't great though when he was in. Like he wasn't great, and it was like, okay, well, this is your next opportunity.
He was the third guy in. He was replacing Michael Carmody, who got hurt.
Right.
Who was replacing Blake Fisher, who got hurt.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And so it was like, okay, what are we going to see from Tosh? It wasn't a perfect game by any stretch of the imagination, but he was steady and he worked his butt off over there at right tackle. There was a part of me that was like, man, I hope they find a tackle, in the portal. And maybe there's still a little bit of a part of me that from a depth standpoint, maybe that's still the case. But watching Tosh play in this game was like, okay, you know what? With another offseason, and you know what? They're going to be just fine.
He can do his job. Now,
yes, absolutely.
Like I said, the thing that Tosh has, and we can talk about some of the technical things with each guy as we're going through the guys, and then talk about that. But like Tosh at times still has a tendency to narrow his base and get tall, and then that's when he can get driven back. Well,
and that's my biggest issue from Charles is that he gets a little bit too high.
The base gets narrow
in pass sets because these guys, the defensive line for Oregon State was small. They were small, and so they're going to try to win the leverage battle. And so there were times
outside.
That's what I'm talking about. Yep. So there's times where they would get up into his chest and they would stand him up, and he would get pushed back a little bit more. And so obviously that's a coaching point. You want to keep low, get your butt down. Don't let him leverage you from underneath like that and push you back. But while they pushed him back, they didn't necessarily get to where they wanted to go. You know what I mean? He was still a gigantic person in the way. But I would like to see them stalemate that a little bit more often. So again, that's just a technical thing that I want to see him.
And I was also pleased with Tosh, Vince, as I thought his ability to handle the speed. Both of them ability to handle the speed rush was very good. The sack that Charles gave up, he actually beat the guy to the spot, but then kind of kept working a little bit too much, and the guy went inside of him.
Came underneath him,
Right. They both handled the speed really well.
Yes, agreed.
And they were very natural out of their stance, smooth. Charles was quicker, which is that's a freaking athletic, massive human being.
Yes, it is.
Like when you see him in a Notre Dame uniform and you just see how big he is and how well he moves, you're like, this kid's going to be special. Like you knew it, but it's kind of like confirmation of like, okay, I didn't get that eval wrong. I got that one right. But Tosh was smooth. I mean, he's not super explosive, but he's just smooth. He was long. It's a couple times he got beat inside, but it was more of a double team problem than a Tosh problem. Like there was one time that I thought Billy needs to help him and give a little, either give a flipper or give a little help inside on the zone, and he didn't, and the guy beats it. And it looks like Tosh got beat, but in reality, the double team wasn't executed as effectively as it needed to be. Oregon State ran some line games that created problems. There was one time they did a double. It was like one of the hits on the quarterback they gave up. They ran a double inside twist and then brought a guy around, and Tosh tried to get over late, but that was just a really well-designed inside stunt that you need to try to be able to pass off with your inside guys.
Yeah.
And so there was mistakes like that were made. But the biggest problem for me, Vince, aside from the younger blockers need to do a better job of taking better angles to their point of attack.
Yeah.
Charles had some issues with that. Billy's had issues with that. Ashton had issues with that. But Billy and Charles especially had issues with it. It were just simple things like if I'm down blocking, I got to aim for that upfield, tight on the upfield shoulder. Because if I go too high on the upfield shoulder, it comes underneath me. If I go too far down, then he goes over top of me.
And a lot of that has to do with time on the field. Like they need to get a feel.
These guys don't just stand there and let you hit them at the aiming point. You know what I mean? They're going to move, right?
So it's experience. I mean, it's plays. It is experience. It's being out there
at game speed.
Correct.
Right.
100%.
It's not doing your individual drills, which are good drills, by the way, where you're going against another offensive lineman. You know, and you're working the footwork. And I mean, there's no or against your scout team. There's no substitute for those live game reps, man.
100%.
And they got those.
Right.
So I was really impressed with what I saw from them from a competitive standpoint. I thought the physicality was really impressive against a strong, not a big group, but a strong, quick group of guys. Those guys were, and I thought that the young guys especially really handled the athleticism very well. Very well. And I thought that Charles, after settling in, like Charles was getting used to, okay, I'm playing against grown-ups.
Right.
And it took a minute, but once he settled in, he was really good.
Right.
Blake was really steady. Billy was up and down, but his good snaps were as dominant as anybody had. Like, I mean, that's the thing with Billy. Ashton was solid. Ashton wasn't great in this game. He wasn't great. They threw a lot at him. And the thing that I liked about what I saw from Ashton was he struggled in this game with all the stuff they were throwing at him. But, dude, he just kept battling, Vince.
Yeah.
Like, he just kept fighting and competing. And when they didn't throw line games at him and they just tried to play Notre Dame straight up, they'd blow him off the ball.
And we talked about this in pregame, Ryan and I, about it being an odd front and having a guy on his head for the first time at the college level. You know what I mean? And he's probably going to struggle at times with that because that centers when they're when they're seeing that for the first time, sometimes they struggle with that, right?
And that's where the timing was the issue, Vince, because the double teams weren't coming. I'm sorry, buddy. Go ahead.
Continue. No. I was just going to say, I completely agree with that. And you need to have communication with where you're not the double team guy, you're the lead guy and the double team is coming to you. It's just different. It's a different feel. It's a different way of going about it that again, with reps and with time, he's going to get a lot better with that because he didn't quit. Like it wasn't like he was just getting beat and we were seeing the front of his jersey from behind and things like that. There was some communication issues and there was stalemates and things like that.
Thing. That's why it was so effective because here's one of the big issues I had with the line today. And it's really been an issue all year and it's something Coach Rudolph needs to focus on. The offensive line, especially the inside guys, come off the line, hit, and stop their feet. And it just stagnates. And this happened a lot under Jeff Quinn. The difference, however, is that when this group does it, it's after firing off the line. Where the previous group would do it, Vince, where they would kind of step and catch. And so you would see them kind of either get hit at the line or the line would get reset backwards. Where on Saturday, when things got when they'd stop their feet, they would stop their feet still like a foot, a yard past the line, so it allowed the backs to still go make plays. And so what this is more about is not so much the catching that we saw under Jeff Quinn, but it's more about finishing that next step. So stepping, hitting,
they're firing out. They're firing out.
Part, yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. And there were times where Ashton would kind of catch a little bit, but that's what Ryan was talking about. Like when you got that guy right on your nose, that's a different animal, right? And then that double team's got to come and it's got to smack it hard. And they weren't always doing that, because the timing wasn't always where it needed to be. All that comes from this group's just got to play together more.
Absolutely.
And those type of things. But what I liked about Coach Rudolph's unit was even though there was like a lot of technical mistakes, which you'd expect from a line starting 2 redshirt freshmen and a true freshman. And the reality is Billy Schrouth was making his 3rd career start, which is the same number of career starts that Tosh Baker has, right? Your most experienced player was Pat Coogan by far.
Yeah.
Pat Coogan had more career starts in this game than anybody else in the offensive line combined.
Yes, because he has 13.
Think about that.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Yeah.
So you're going to have those mistakes. This isn't beating up on Coach Rudolph. If anything, I think he did a great job because his kids played their butts off.
Yeah.
They physically played hard. Now the technical part can come next. But, you know, the hand play wasn't always where it needed to be. It was a lot of face popping, but then not bringing hands with, you know, a lot of chest popping, but then not driving your feet through, not bringing your hands through to
Sure.
get that drive. A lot of stuff like that where you saw too much of that. That's expected from a young group, though, Vince. I mean, Pat and Billy have had that kind of, Pat and Ashton have kind of, or goodness, Billy and Ashton have had that issue in their two previous starts as well, where they would kind of stop their feet. And that's young guy stuff that, you know, that'll come. But the physicality with which they played the game against a very physical offensive line tells me, you know, we talked about the job that Coach Freeman did getting the team prepared, but it told me that in the preparation for the game, Joe Rudolph did a very good job of making sure his players understood, fellas, you are in for a battle. These kids are going to come off and hit you in the mouth. They're going to pop you in the face. They're going to play their butts off. They're older. They're stronger. They're a really good run defense. You got to meet the challenge, not just technically, not assignment-wise, but you got to meet this grown man challenge. And he had a bunch of kids in that game. And those kids came out and fought and battled, lost some, but won a lot because they were just better. And that's the exciting thing, Vince, is it's one thing to have talent. Great, they have talent. But the talent played hard. They played hard. And that allowed the really talented backs to be effective. Now, prove the footwork. Really work on exploding into contact and driving your 2 feet through contact. Really got to work on that a lot based on what we saw. You know, Charles has got to use his hands a little bit more consistently. You know, use them as weapons a little bit more. Tosh and Charles got to make sure they keep better base, right? So they don't narrow up. And you got to do a better job taking angles. You know, they were not doing a great job getting there was a lot of overtop scrapes from linebackers that didn't get picked up in this game. The running backs had to make those guys miss. All that stuff is correctable. But what you can't correct is if you don't have guys that are going to fight their butts off, and if you have an offensive line coach that's not getting your guys ready to play hard. That was an issue at times during the regular season.
Sure.
It was. But what we know is they finished the season off, the last 3 games of the year, this offensive line came out and said, we're going to physically meet the challenge. We may not technically meet the challenge, right? Our timing may not be what it needs to be and all that other kind of stuff, but physically, we're going to meet the challenge. And they did that in this bowl game, and I'm excited about it now. It's like, can coach get the technical part fixed? We got to see that, right?
Sure.
That's an issue. We got to see it fixed. But I was very happy to see how well he had these kids ready to play. He really did. And I spent a lot of time during pregame watching that group. And it was just, I mean, you could see, like, okay, they're going to have some issues in this game with hand play. He's still working on that. You could just tell he was still working with them on it. But they were doing a lot of things where it was about, let's try to get some popping going here in pregame. Let's try to really get this going. You could tell that they were ready for the challenge. And then when the second line came in and you saw like Sullivan Absher and Sam Pendleton that kid's going to be that kid. If you're a starting guard right now for Notre Dame, don't think you've got a job locked up, because Sam Pendleton, now when he gets another offseason under his belt, and you get Sullivan Absher with another offseason under his belt, those kids are not just going to assume, I'm a second teamer, it's all good. I'm going to enjoy watching. No, those kids came in and played, to your point, Vince. They played like, all right, you did your thing. Now it's my turn.
Yeah.
And they bullied the second string Oregon State defensive line.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Like, they bullied them. I was great to see.
There was a mentality from this offense when the second kids came in. It wasn't like, okay, well, we're in here to, not kneel it, but you know what I mean? Just come in, run the clock, you know what? No, there was a mentality like, look, this is the last time I get to play competitive football for a few months, and I'm going to kick your butt, and I'm going to have a nice flight home afterwards. Like, they came out to play, man. Yeah. And it was across the board.
Yeah.
It was Devin, it was Colsey, it was the offensive line, it was Flanagan, who obviously played a bunch before, but he was in there as the first tight end now with that second group. So, like, it was across the board. These kids were playing hard all the way through. All the way through.
The biggest disappointment from the game, or I'll say disappointment, I thought the guy that struggled the most was Pat Coogan.
Yeah.
Because the one thing Oregon State, the reason that I thought Billy and Ashton and those other guys played well is because they could handle the athleticism. that Oregon State had. And we said that coming in the game. These kids are quick. They're penetrating. They're aggressive. Pat really struggled with the athleticism of Oregon State. And he had the most in my grading, he had the most MAs. And most just got beat. He just got beat the most.
Yeah.
And that was a little.
Well, and it honestly, and I'm not going to pile on the kid, but it highlighted one of the things that he just didn't do well all season. And when they play a team like this, it just gets highlighted.
It's always going to be an issue. He's just not a very athletic guy.
Right.
Try hard is there. Like they tried pulling him twice on outside tosses, and it's just like, why are you asking that kid to do that? He's not going to get out there to that guy. The guy beats him up the field and drills Jadarian for a loss, and you're just like, why are you asking him to do that?
Right.
Like that's not on Pat. Pat's trying as hard as he can. He's hustling.
They tried to put him out there. They pulled him and Ashton on the Gray House screen,
that was one of the worst play calls of the game, by the way.
So I mean, the two of them did not have a prayer of getting out in front of that play. They didn't have a prayer. Like at first, I was like, oh man, those are some bad misses. Man, they were set up for failure. Like there was no way they were going to get out in front of that.
That play was going nowhere.
They were setting Great House up to just get smacked. And to his credit, he held on to the football.
Yeah.
But that was just not going to happen. Just wasn't.
Last thing is, I thought Cooper Flanagan really struggled in this game blocking wise. Like, I'll just leave it at that. He really struggled. He got his butt kicked in this game against Oregon State, which I'm just going to chalk up to a bad game because I've seen that kid block his butt off all year. I just think he had a bad game. I think they got up under his pads and they kind of pushed him around a little bit. And then he had some issues. He got beat inside a few times from backside stuff. Just a sloppy technical game. And I just didn't think he was quite prepared for the physicality of the game. He was probably, not probably, he had my lowest grade of the game. And I don't want to make too much of it because it was just a bad game for him. And that happens.
Sure. We've got plenty of tape to know who he is.
That's exactly my point, Vince. It's like I have a lot of tape of Cooper Flanagan battling his butt off and blocking well. And I just think he had a bad game. And it happens. So I'm not worried about it. I'm not – not a bad game. Everybody has them.
Yeah.
Everybody has them.
For sure.
And this was Cooper's. But he'll battle back because like you said, Vince, there's a lot of film of him this season, including against some better defensive players than what he. I mean, he played we saw him against Clemson, and he was just fine. So I'm not overly concerned about it, to be completely honest with you. It just was to me it was just a bad game. Just a rough game for him. So. But he'll need to get better, obviously, and he will. He'll be fine. Like I said, he'll be fine. He just had a rough game. But anything else from that group that you want to get into before we go on to the defense?
Nope, I think we hit it. And before we go on to the defense, make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button, that notification bell, and share with your family, friends, all the fun stuff. boards.irishbreakdown.com, irishbreakdown.com. Just check it all out because we got 8.5 months, boys, and girls. We're going to keep you up to date. So make sure you check all that out, but don't go anywhere because we still have the defense. All right, Brian.
This is going to be a shorter show because there's like very little to be critical of with the defense.
I figured I'd throw the break in there and see what happens, but the defense is
we'll have plenty to talk about. It's not going to be an hour long like the other one was.
But look, here's the bottom line with the defense, at least as far as I'm concerned. Al Golden obviously had the biggest advantage from a Notre Dame standpoint because he had most of his guys back. I mean, he had, he was missing Cam Hart. He was missing Nana Sofa-Mensah, and he was missing Marist. Those were the three guys that he was missing.
Ramon's
and Harper. And Harper.
That's right, your nickel, who was very good for Notre Dame this year.
So very good.
They had some dudes out. But
as I say it out loud, he had more guys out than I thought.
One of the things Al Golden did a much better job of this year than last year that we haven't talked a lot about, he played so many more guys.
Yeah.
Real snaps.
Right.
like, okay, Nana's out, and Nana was great this year in his role. But Josh Burnham played a ton of football this year and just easily slid right into that role and handled business.
Right.
And then you get into, to other situations where you're like, okay, yeah, you don't have Thomas Harper, but you had Clarence Lewis played a bunch this year and was able to handle that role. They did a lot of, which we talked about. We thought they were going to play a lot of base defense because of the way Oregon State plays, and they did.
Sure.
And so linebacker wise, Jalen Sneed played a lot of football this year, so he was able to slide right in. So that helped them. I mean, we've seen Notre Dame line up with a game still on the line without Benjamin Morrison and Cam Hart this year. If you remember the Pitt game,
right,
and they were fine. Christian Gray played a lot of football this year. Jaden Mickey played a lot of football this year, so that helped him in this game. Because, like you said, they weren't missing nearly as much as the offense was. And in your head, you're like, yeah, they had everybody back except for, and then you start naming, and you're like, well, actually, that's a lot more than
I know, right?
You know what I mean? Because they had so many guys that did play that we saw.
Right.
And that's the thing, is because like they still played all their Vipers, they still had all their D tackles, they had, still had a bunch of deep. I mean, so there's still a lot of guys that we were expected to see because they played so much.
Right.
And I thought that it was there, but no, he had this team ready to play, Vince. This was an outstanding, and honestly, Vince, it was the perfect way to end the season for this group, because like the defense was just lights out all year. And I wholeheartedly believe this. This is one of the 5 best defenses in college football this year, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And they were able to do it all year. I mean, and it's not just a gut feeling or anything like that. I mean, that's what the numbers show. They were the number 7 team in college football this year in scoring defense, number 6 amongst Power 5 teams. 4 of the 5 teams ahead of them were Big Ten teams. Why? Because Big Ten offenses suck. That's why the numbers, think about it. In college football this year, number 1, 2, 3, and 4 scoring defenses in college football were all from one conference. It's not a coincidence. And then the only non-Big Ten team ahead of Notre Dame is Georgia, who gave up 15.6 points per game this year. Notre Dame gave up 15.9. Notre Dame this year, Vince, ranked 6th in college football in total defense, 5th amongst Power 5 teams. Again, the only teams ahead of them, Big Ten teams, because again, offenses suck. Notre Dame was 5th in college football this year in total yards per play. All 4 teams ahead of them, Big Ten teams, because the Big Ten sucks. I just want to remind people of that the Big Ten sucks. I'm going to say it again. The Big Ten in 2023 sucks. Notre Dame ranked 3rd this year in passing defense. They ranked 3rd in fewest yards allowed per play. They're number 1 in college football in passer rating. They are number 2 in college football in fewest yards, lowest completion percentage. They allowed 8 touchdown passes all year. They had 16 interceptions on the season. This was a phenomenal defense all season. And their bad games were not really bad games. It was they did their part as best they could. Special teams let them down. Offense let them down. This was a great job. And to see them to end the season with a dominant performance was very fitting. Yeah. And it was just one more, like, there's reports. I think it's I think John Bryce from Football Scoop has reported that they're in negotiations to give him an extension. This is just a little feather in his cap. This is his agents watching that game thinking, oh, I might even throw a couple $100,000 on this one, baby, on this offer. You know what I mean? Because it was just such a brilliant performance. I mean, again, it was an undermanned Oregon State offense. It was. And they did exactly what they're supposed to do against a team like that. They thoroughly dominated it. They only crossed midfield once before the second team came in. And that was on the final drive of the half where they were basically playing off coverage. That's it. That's the only time they crossed midfield. Think about that. And so they overwhelmed them in every capacity. And it was just a great end of the season. And, because Al Golden's a guy that's caught a lot of heat and with Notre Dame faithful, including from us last season.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And now I thought some of the criticism went too far, which is why, you and I defended him this summer and why I said, this defense is going to be a lot better than people think this season.
Right.
And it was even better than I thought it was going to be.
Right.
I mean, I thought this was going to be a top 15 defense this year. I can go back and find the video of it. I thought it was going to be a top 15. I undersold it. It was a top 5 defense this year.
Yeah.
It was excellent. And then, of course, the one area they've struggled all season, it struggled relative to other, you know what I mean? Their top 30 run defense this year. That was it. They weren't a great run defense this year. I think they were like 29th coming into the game. And so what do? They end the season with just an absolutely dominant run game performance.
2 yards.
I'm sorry, they were top 40. They were like 39th, I think, in run defense. Something like 38, 39th. Gave up 2 yards. 16 carries, 2 yards.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's
about as good as
getting
you're
it
going
done.
to do. Yeah, it's
That's
about as
getting
good
it
as
done.
it's
I mean,
get.
you know, obviously there's sacks in there and all that other kind of stuff.
But everybody
like,
else gets to count sacks
right,
too.
Exactly.
So
but like my point is, but even if you take that away and you just like, I'm going to pull up the stats here, Vince. But even if you take that away and you just look at like what the running back did, it was like, okay. And again, talk about, you know, yeah, they were missing their starting running back. Okay, that's very true. But as we pointed out before, the guy that was their backup is a guy that's played a lot of football, Deshaun Fenwick, who in last year's game when Damian Martinez got hurt early against Florida, went out and ran for 100 yards in a bowl game against Florida last year. Right. And he went for 15 yards on 6 carries. Their backup running back had 0 yards on 3 carries. So their 2 running backs ran for 15 yards on 8 carries. So even if you take out sacks, Vince, they averaged under 2 yards a carry from their backs. And then their receiver had 2 carries for -1 yards. And then, of course, their quarterback was -21. So even if you take out the sacks and you just look at their running backs, 8 carries for 15 yards. They had 21 yards gained, 6 yards lost in the game. So even if you just look at the plays where they gained 8 carries for 21 yards, don't even count the minuses on there. And that's just sheer dominance. And again, They were missing 3 starters. Notre Dame should have overwhelmed them, and they did. Now, what I liked about the game plan too, Vince, is it was aggressive, but it was not like I was worried he was going to come out and just say they got an undermanned offensive line. Let's just throw the kitchen sink at him.
Yeah.
And they didn't. It was aggressive, but it was play our defense aggressive, like attack, step, fly the ball. It wasn't blitzing your linebackers 87 million times on first and second down. It wasn't bringing 8. It was I'm going to trust my guys to play fast, fly the ball, and dominate them. And he did. And that's exactly what he did. And so I was very excited and very happy to see it. They continued to play their man coverage, but it was just. And then when they did need to heat up Morgan State or chose to heat them up, it made those blitzes so much more effective. And because it was like they weren't quite sure. Okay, are they coming or not?
Right.
Where are they coming from? It was whereas if you're always bringing your inside backers, it's a lot easier to prepare for that. Like, hey guys, we know we're coming. We just got to do this. And then you block it right 2 or 3 times and you rip off a backside cut for 15, 25 yards. I mean, that's what you do. But they didn't do that in this game, Vince. And they let their D-line feast, and they did. And that was really where it is. So huge tip of the cap to Al Golden for just the job he did all year, and then ending the season exactly how a defense of this caliber should have ended the season. And they only had 197 yards of offense, and
85 of it came in the fourth quarter
against their backups.
I looked it up during the post-game show.
And another 30 or so of that came on the final play of the first half because they went from 66 yards to 103.
Yeah.
Because they got like 30-some yards when Notre Dame was playing off because they got the ball with like 40 seconds left.
Right.
And so if you think about it, over half of those yards came in not against the normal defense.
Right.
That's sheer domination. Sheer domination.
Yes, it was. So, yeah, now look, I was saying all week, when we actually started diving into the matchups and all that, I thought Notre Dame would win because of their defense. I thought they would actually get maybe a defensive score.
I thought there was 0 chance of losing this game because of the defense.
Correct.
You're right.
100%. And that's I didn't think it would be this dominant. And that's saying something because I was very confident in what the defense was going to bring to the table. I really was. I mean, my prediction, even though I didn't send it in, was 31-7. And
sure.
I know, right?
Sure it was, Vince.
But they exceeded my expectation. I mean, there was no glaring missed tackles in this game. And then that was a bit of an issue at times, during the season. There was none of that. The open field tackling was, I thought, extremely good. Obviously, they were sticky in pass defense. I thought Christian Gray had a bit of a coming out party as a starter out there. I mean, we knew who Christian Gray was, but he proved who he was in this game. Xavier Watts played great. I was very impressed with the way that the defense played in this game, just better than I even anticipated. And I knew that they would be the best side of the ball of all four sides of the ball: offense, defense for Notre Dame, offense, defense for Oregon State. I knew the Notre Dame defense was going to be the best group, but man, did they exceed my expectations. Like, they just dominated.
Yeah, they did. And it was a fitting end to the season. It was. And we'll dive into the specific position groups overall, but I thought the game plan too was smart, because what you don't want to do in a game like this is allow a team that's undermanned to rip off big plays.
Right.
And that's why I thought it was smart to not be uber aggressive, even though it would have probably resulted in like 13, 14 tackles for loss and 6 or 7 sacks. But it also was going to result in, Anthony or Silas Bolden, before he gets hurt, catching you on a slant where he catches it and there's nobody behind you.
Sure.
Or Fenwick, they get that backside edge sealed. You call it wrong, and Fenwick cuts that sucker back for a 40-yard gain because you got nobody back there. Right. Like, that's also what could have happened if you'd have done that. But it was very sound, but also very aggressive. Because the other thing you can do is, hey, they're not very good, so let's just play off and just, play bend but don't break. No, he said, this is who we are. We're going to be who we are.
Yes.
We're not going to do differently because they're shorthanded. We're going to be who we are. And we're going to, this defensive line's been great for us all year. And that was really the turning point for the defense, is when Al Golden finally realized, I got a really good D-line. I'm just going to let them go. It's like the Duke game is really when that started. I'm just going to turn them loose.
Yeah.
And just let them be the reason that our defense is so good. And from that moment on, this defense was just a lot different. And when he did that, and then he kind of went away from it against Louisville, and then the rest of the year, he just kind of turned them loose.
Right.
And so I thought that was a really good thing to see. And then D-line, like I said, Vince, look, I thought the entire D-line played well, but it was, and I'm setting you up because I want you to talk about this because I know how fired up you were about it. It was great to see Jordan Botelho being the guy we hoped he would have been all year.
Yes, because he wasn't this all year. I mean, I'm sorry, he just wasn't, and he was even better on the rewatch for me than he was live, because when I looked at the defensive box score after the game was over and I saw that he led the team in tackles, I was a little surprised. I was like, oh, okay. So I made an effort to watch Jordan Botelho on the rewatch. I tell you what, not only was he sound in the tackling game and things of that nature, that show up on the box score, he did a really good job of setting the edge. He wasn't allowing things to get outside of him. And that's where he really struggled during the year, is he just wasn't sound when it came to that kind of stuff. Just wasn't. Right. And he was in this game. I mean, if he can do that next year on a consistent basis,
right,
he's going to be a real asset to this defense.
Because here's what's different from this game compared to last year's bowl game. Last year's bowl game was all about the pass rush with him. It was all about the pressures. Right. What was different about this game is he was at it. I mean, he had 3. He was tied for second on the defense in pressures. He had 3. Only had 3 pressures. He had a sack, a hit, and a hurry, according to Pro Football Focus. Okay. Last year, he had 10 pressures in the game. 10. What was different in this game is he did all the little things really well. That's
the things that don't show up on the box score.
He set the edge really effectively. His backside pursuit was good. He had 1 snap where he took too high of an angle that allowed the quarterback to step up and get out. That was really his big mistake in the game. But it was just doing the little stuff effectively, which was really good to see.
Yes.
And
I hadn't seen it all year.
No, he just was so undisciplined this year and so disappointing for much of the year. And he just was really good all around. Riley Mills, I mean, I thought Riley Mills spent more time near the quarterback than the running backs did in this game. I mean, it just was like, good Lord. Howard Cross got off to a little bit of a slow start. I thought they did a pretty good job early of getting 2 bodies on him, sometimes 3 early on. Like, they were really worried about Howard Cross early in the game. You could tell. And he kind of figured it out quickly and then started beating them. Yeah. Like, once he realized, like, okay, these cats are double teaming me, and then he started having kind of a counter plan to it, and then he just whooped it. Like the sack he had.
Nobody gets skinny like he does, man.
No, but that's a perfect example of the sack was that, Vince, because they tried to double team him, but he just got off the ball so quickly and just did one of these and got right by the guy. And he was on the quarterback before. Like, the kid thought he had time to throw it, and he's like, holy crap, this kid's about to hit me. and he just kind of took it and took the sack. He was really good. Javonte Jean-Baptiste was good in this game.
Yeah.
Josh Burnham was great in this game in limited snaps. I mean,
even on special teams.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
he did.
Well,
obviously.
that's really the play to me that broke the game open. That one right there.
Right.
Because on that particular play, like it was 7-0. I mean, I get why they did it.
I totally understand why they did it, because he knew, look, their interim head coach is not a dummy.
No.
He knew that the offense was going to struggle to score in this game. And he was going to have to take chances.
It was probably worse for them than they thought, especially when Silas Bolden was hurt.
Correct.
You
and
know
he's
what I
like,
mean? Like,
we're going to have to take chances in this game. And so that fake punt was a massive chance to take.
My issue was the actual call.
Right.
Not that they faked it. But Josh read it perfectly. I mean, he just beat the guy off the line. I mean, he just had no chance.
Yeah,
just no chance. And then, you know, so I thought he was excellent in the game. I thought Donovan Heinisch, I enjoyed watching him in the end of the game, like I enjoyed watching Sam Pendleton in the end of the game, with just how like this guy dominated those backups like this, you know, and he's played a lot of football this year, Donovan has, but that was good to see. I thought he played really well. I thought Jason Onye played pretty well in this game too. I liked what I saw from him. He didn't play a ton, but he was quick off the line. He was very they actually had him lined up at end late in the game. Did you see that? They had him at big end. Yeah, really? He had a couple snaps, and I'm like, who the heck was that? And he came off, and he was pretty quick coming off the ball, man. So I thought he played well. Like I said, Riley played well. Gabriel Rubio played well. I mean, just the entire D-line, I thought, just played right well in this football game. They really did. I was very pleased with what I saw from the D-line. They dominated. They should have dominated, and they did. I mean, again, it was a really good. That's a really good offensive line that Oregon State had all year. One of the 5 to 10 best in college football. The problem is their 3 best linemen didn't play in this game. Right. It is what it is. It sucks. It would have been a great battle to see.
Sure.
But the way that this line played, they still wouldn't have had a lot of success. Just the way that Notre Dame played in this game.
Right.
And
what a luxury to have if you're Al Golden, to have a defensive line that can play like that.
Yeah.
Because then you don't have to trigger your linebackers a bunch in first and second down. You don't have to be super creative. You know, you can just let those guys scrape and do their jobs at the second level. And that's what they were able to do.
Yeah. So just a really strong performance from the Notre Dame defensive line. And just, again, across the board, it just was everybody coming in.
Yeah.
And as I said, that play by Burnham, though, to finish it was great timing, because that's what kind of broke the game open, because Notre Dame gets the ball now with less than a minute, or like with about 3 minutes left. And then they just go right down and score. And 14-0 had to feel like 40-0 for Oregon State.
Well, and that's the thing. That's if you're just turning on the game at halftime, you're like, wow, 14-0 is kind of a close game, you know. But if you watch the first half, it's like, it's not that close.
Right.
It's, especially when you're talking about Notre Dame's defense versus Oregon State's offense. Like, Oregon State never threatened. They just never threatened. I was never like, oh my gosh, they might kick a field goal. Like, there was never even a threat of putting points on the board.
I think that's the thing that surprised them, Vince, is how athletic some of those linemen are. They had no answer for Josh Burnham's speed when he came flying off the ball. I mean, and then on the safety, him and JD Bertrand just destroyed Oregon State on that play.
Yes.
I mean, they had no chance.
Oh my gosh. Like, but right when Notre Dame didn't pick up that 4th down, I texted the group message. You know, I was like, defense is going to score here. Yep. And they did it on 1st down. Like, it wasn't.
I didn't know what it was going to be. Are they going to have like a strip sack? Is it, like pick six, or is it going to be a safety? And then just first play, they had no chance.
None.
They had no chance.
None.
Yeah.
And I don't blame Oregon State for the call, but you're going to try to run up the middle against this defense at that point in the field. It's like, I get that
they should have just snuck it and just tried to burrow your way out of there.
Like, don't put the ball in the end zone like that. Like, that is just not going to work out well, man. It just wasn't.
No.
So,
defensive line, great performance. Linebackers, I was so happy to see JD Bertrand end his career the way he did. This was like the ultimate JD game. It wasn't sexy. Nope. He didn't have monster numbers, but he got everybody lined up where they needed to be. The defense had like no MAs, like no big MAs, because your mic gets everybody set. Right. You know, he played hard and just brought it. I mean, he had the go back, folks, go back and watch the safety. Like, that's borderline assault, how hard he hit that guy. You know what I mean? Like I'm contemplating pressing charges if I'm that guy. Like, he just came in like I'm hurting, like not hurting. Shouldn't say that. I'm blowing somebody up.
Right.
Like, that's what JD came in there was very bad at football intentions on that play.
Yes.
And, and then he had the pass break up and he just was good in coverage. And it just was like the ultimate JD Bertrand game. It wasn't sexy. It didn't have a Jeremiah Usukormo freaky athletic play or Jalen Smith. It just, the dude, it's like JD Bertrand is what Brian Van Gorder in his head thought Joe Schmidt was, but he actually wasn't.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because JD can make plays and he's athletic and he's just, I enjoyed watching, and he just played. He's like, you could tell he's like, I'm just out here to we're going to dominate this thing, and I'm going to go out and play with some reckless abandon, and we're going to dominate. And it was fun to watch him end his career the way that he did. It really was.
Yes, it was. And again, he just puts another. It was a tactician's game for him. You know what I mean? And that's the film that NFL guys are going to see. They're going to just see him as a leader of the defense, getting everybody where they're supposed to be, and making plays on his own as well.
Yeah.
And that's where he's going to excel, moving forward, where he's either in the Senior Bowl or the blue-gray game or whatever it is.
Actually, he was originally in the Shrine Bowl, but now he's in the Senior Bowl.
Oh, okay. So he upgraded. Good for him.
Yeah.
So the Senior Bowl isn't about the game itself. It's about the practices and whatnot leading up to it and the interviews.
I've been told some of the scouts even leave before the game.
Oh, I'm sure they do, because it's a glorified scrimmage is what it is.
Right. It's the practice. It's the one-on-ones. It's the coaching. Exactly.
And that's where he is going to absolutely shine. He's going to absolutely shine at that. So, Notre Dame fans who didn't appreciate who JD Bertrand was to this defense and to this team are going to miss him next year. Now, a lot of talent behind him. There's no doubt about it. We're all excited to see the youth movement. But as you said, this was a great way to send off JD Bertrand with the way he played inside the structure of the defense and then just making plays.
Yeah, and I thought Jack Kaiser was good in the game too. I thought Jack was solid. He had that really good play early in the game where he blew up the screen. They tried to run that little slip screen, or no, it was actually a little tight end slip screen on him.
Oh, yeah.
And he just sniffed it out, brought the guy down in space. I mean, if he does, look, that's not an easy tackle. That was a kind of a good-sized kid that he brought down. And
there was
Jack's not
nobody else
around. If he misses that tackle or doesn't read that right, that's a big play.
Yep.
And as soon as he hit the guy, you're like, that guy's going down.
Yeah, that's exactly what I said too. I was like, oh, he's got him.
He's got him. Exactly. There's one play they ran an outside zone and Jack didn't come down hard enough to really blow up the lead blocker, and it allowed him to get like 7-8 yard run, something like that. It was like one of their biggest runs of the game. Other than that, he was good. He was real steady. I thought Jalen Sneed was this was the most, like, Jalen didn't have like a really impressive game in regard to, like, he didn't have like any highlight reel, wow, Jalen, what a great play type of thing. But what I liked though, Vince, was he just did his job.
Sure.
And that's always been the issue with Jalen is can he do the little things? He's going to make the flashy plays, but can he do the little things? And the one thing that you saw was there was a play they ran a jet sweep, and I can't remember who it was, but he got sucked inside. I'm thinking, uh-oh. And then all of a sudden, Jalen Sneed comes out of nowhere, and you're like, that was a 2-yard gain. And it should have been more, because his sideline speed is just really outstanding. It really is.
And I thought that Al Golden did a good job with Jalen Sneed, and they put him in position to be successful doing what Jalen Sneed does, is just be athletic, be fast, coming downhill, making plays. Like, Jalen Sneed is not a guy that I want playing middle linebacker who's diagnosing and doing things.
But he did some of that.
He did some of that.
I liked,
but that's not where I want his focus to be. Like, I just want him flying the football.
Yeah.
Like, that's
what
he needs to be able
Craig
to do.
D in the chat just made a good point, Vince. He said he seemed more under control in this game in a good way. And,
I agree with
that.
I agree with
that.
And
he did. And even when he was flying downhill, he was doing it with purpose and taking a good angle of the football and those type of things. So that was a really positive thing to see. And then we saw Drake Bowen get a lot of playing time in the game too.
Yeah.
He got smoked they hit him with a sluggo. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
But
he bit on the inside.
And of course, that's the only one people saw. He did that. They did that. They tried to hit him they had tried to beat him outside 3 times early in the game, and every time he covered it.
Right with him.
I mean, just right with him.
Yeah.
Yeah. They just hit him with that double. That's why they did the double move though, because they couldn't run past him.
Right.
And so they hit him with that double move and he bit hard on it and they beat him over top. It's part of the learning process. But I thought outside of that play, I thought Drake was really good,
Yeah.
in what he was asked to do. He really, really solid. But you can just see he's just a second slower diagnosing than Jack and JD, which you expect. They're fifth-year seniors. He's a true freshman.
Spot. Yeah.
But I was pleased with, and they had him playing. They had him playing Will in this game too, Vince. Did you notice that? There was times where he was on the field with JD. Him and JD were on the field together. So that was good to see. So they felt confident enough with where Drake is with his development that they actually played him at both spots.
Okay.
Inside and outside. So that was good to see. I was glad to see that.
Okay, well, that opens up some possibilities for next year too.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, well, and if he's not starting,
right?
But I still think he'll be starting.
I do too. No, I do
too. Let's say you could maybe down the road him and Kingston together. If you think Kingston's better than Mike, you have a Will, or if Kingston at Will, and you have Drake and Mike, whatever the case may be.
Yep.
But he was good. I thought Jaden Alsbury played well in limited snaps on that last series. I thought he was very active, flew around the ball. Didn't play a ton of snaps, but I thought he was good in the game as well. So that was good to see from Jaden as well. But yeah, I thought Drake did well outside of about two snaps. One of them being that sluggo snap where they hit him with that sluggo and got behind him. Fortunately, the ball didn't come.
Right.
But that was the one big mistake. But I thought he was pretty good. Just overall, I thought the linebacker play was really solid.
Yeah.
And just such a far cry from where it was a year ago.
Oh,
I mean, it really was.
For sure.
It really was.
No, you got me thinking about like a heavy run package with Kingston at Mike and maybe Drake at Will, like in a short yardage situation. Like
Rover.
Yeah, like that's what I've got going on in my head. Yeah. So that's the coach in me, seeing all the toys that Al Golden gets to play with defensively. So secondary, Brian.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, this is it. Look, I'm just extremely excited about what the secondary has to offer. And I was very clear about this in the post-game show, and I want to continue to be very clear about this moving forward. If you followed Irish Breakdown for any amount of time, you know what a huge fan I am of Cam Hart and what he's brought to this team and how good of a player he is.
VP of the Cam Hart fan club.
I got downgraded
to a president. VP, well, you know why.
I do.
His mom had some issues with you claiming to be the president.
Yes, he did. Which is okay.
Because she is the president.
Yes. And I'm okay with being VP. I'm next in line. It's good. I'm good. Not as much responsibility. But I love Cam Hart. I love him. And I think the combination of him and Benjamin Morrison, he's
the best quarterback duo. I don't care what anybody says, with all due respect to Torian and Art. I mean, that group is in conversation. The only group that's even in the conversation is the two at Bama, Kool-Aid McKinstry and Terry Arnold. That's it.
Yep.
But for my money, I'm not taking anybody over those two.
Yeah, absolutely.
No question.
But here's what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
I think the future of Morrison and Christian Gray is better. It has the potential to be better.
It has the potential. Just because I think Christian Christian's going to make more. I mean, has shown this year he's going to make more plays on the ball.
Sure.
He just has more of that experience. I don't know that I'll say better. I'm not willing to go there. I'll just say, I'll say this. They're not going to miss a beat, in my opinion, next season. With those two. And then I'm just curious to see what they're going to do with Mickey, because I keep saying this a lot. He needs to be a nickel, and not because I don't think he can play outside. I do. And not because of any other reason. It's just, I want those three kids on the field together.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think Jaden, with his strength and his ability to come up and take on blocks and do those type of things, like, he could be a great nickel. I just got to say this as we talk about the secondary. I am 45 years old. I don't know that I could show up and cover a game if I lost my father or my mother before a game, the night before the game. I don't know that I would have the ability to focus and do my job, no matter how prepared I might think I am for it, because Mrs. Mickey was battling cancer for a while. That young man stepped up to the plate after the day after losing his mother, and played the way he played, and the way his teammates rallied around him speaks volumes about the kind of young man that Mrs. Mickey and Mr. Mickey raised. And my respect for that kid, just and to play well.
Oh,
Vince,
really well.
Like, not like, okay, yeah, you went out there, but he was distracted and gave up. He played well. And and I get why. I mean, you want to be with your brothers in that moment, right? But still, I don't know that I could have done. I actually I know I couldn't have. I could not have been able to answer the bell the way that Jaden answered the bell when I was his age. I don't know that I could do it now, much less then. And there's a lot more things in life more important than football.
Oh yeah,
And your family's one of them. But sometimes football can be that outlet where your character shines. And it did for Jaden Mickey on Friday. It absolutely did. We saw what kind of young man he is right here.
sure.
And where does that come from? It comes from Lamar, and it comes from his mother and how they raised him to be that kind of man that answers the bell. No matter what's thrown at you, son, you answer the bell in life. And Jaden did that. And I know his mother would be very proud. And I think ultimately that's probably, I don't know the answer to this, but I'll bet you that's why. Is like he knew that's what she would want him to do.
Sure.
And we can't talk about the defense in this game without that. And I know you guys talked about it on Saturday or Friday. I wanted to get that out. You guys did a great job talking about that. I thought Ryan's comments about giving him the player of the game was class. I just wanted to get my thoughts in on that because I've always respected Jaden Mickey. I mean, how many times you heard me say that kid needs to be the nickel because getting him and Christian Gray and Benjamin Morris on the field together is going to be lights freaking out.
Yep.
But beyond that, you see what kind of young man he is by how he stepped up and answered the bell and then played well. You know what I mean? That's the other thing is he played well in the game. This cornerback group is special. But whether it's better or next year or just as good or whatever, the fact of the matter is it's like running back. When you can lose a star like Cam Hart, who was a star this year, part of the reason Christian Gray gets to make more plays on the ball is because teams will throw at him.
Oh,
They
yeah.
just avoided Cam,
Right.
basically. And that's part of it too. But it says about how good the coaching is, but also the talent that coach and Mike Mickens has accumulated over the last couple of years is just special. I mean, and here's the other thing too. Benjamin Morrison looked like last year's version of Benjamin Morrison in this game. He was coming up off the edge. He had a great stuff on the edge where they tried to, it was a corner fire. They tried to pull and he blew it up and made the play on the tackle for loss, him and Patelho. Do you remember, this play I'm talking about?
Yeah. Yep.
And you're just like, that's the Benjamin Morrison that we saw last year that we didn't see as much this year because he wasn't very good against the run this year.
Right.
So that was a great sign too, to see. He got beat one time on an inside move, but outside of that, he was lights out in coverage. They tried to go to Silas Bolden early in the game and go deep on him with some overs and crosses. And every time he was matched up against Benjamin, it was just like he had no chance. Right. That kid's fast. And Benjamin was just all over him.
Kid's super fast. That kid, he was their best offensive weapon. And they still couldn't move the football. And then when he got hurt, it was like, yeah, okay, game over. Like you lost your best offensive weapon to move the football, and that's just obviously not going to happen. So I'm with you 100%. Your three best corners going into 24 are Gray, Morrison, and Mickey. And therefore, I'm having a sit down with Jaden Mickey. I'm like, look, man, you've seen in our offense or in our defense, excuse me, how important the nickel is. And more with the offenses that we play, the nickel is basically a starter. I mean, it is. It's a starting position.
It is 100%.
I mean, it is. And they're not the defense they are this year without Harper. They're done.
And you make same exact thing about Tariq Bracy last year.
I was just you took the words right out of my mouth.
Sorry.
You go back to the year before that. You're not the same defense.
I need to shut up,
Bracy.
let you finish.
It's all good.
And you'll get to it. And if you don't get to it, then I can say something.
Then you got me.
Dang it, Brian. New Year's resolution. Shut your pie hole until the other person's done talking.
But the last 2 years, the nickel has been vitally important to this defense. That can be Jaden Mickey next year. That can absolutely be Jaden Mickey next year. And then he could even slide over and take Morrison's spot potentially the year after that if that's what he wants to do and move to the outside. Then you figure out
or takes Gray's spot and then Gray takes Morrison's spot.
However, however it goes down.
Let me just give you some context, Vince, for what you said. Jack Kaiser this year, who was a starting linebacker, played 354 snaps. Thomas Harper, that's in 13 games. Thomas Harper in 11 games played 438 snaps this season. The starting nickel played 438 snaps as a starter. He played more snaps than Jordan Patelho, the starting Viper. He played more snaps than Jack Kaiser, who was the starting Rover. So, that kid played a lot of snaps this season, a lot of snaps. And so that, like you said, that nickel position, and that's in 11 games.
Right.
If he plays 13 games and he's up near Riley Mills' number of snaps, Javonte John Baptiste number of snaps, that kind of thing, right? So that kid played a lot of snaps. And it's a very important position.
Oh,
and
incredibly
that
important.
would be my sales pitch to him.
Yes.
Would be that.
Like, look, you're going to be a starter. Like, we need you. You are one of the best that we have. We need you on the field on a consistent basis.
Right.
That's absolutely the sales pitch that I would use.
Right.
So,
and look, we'll preview it more in the offseason. I know they got Jordan Clark and all that, and that's fine. You can play them both because you're not going to just play him in the nickel either. The difference is he can still be your third corner.
Yes,
he can still spell those other guys.
Yes.
And so he could even get more snaps in that type of situation. But when you want to put your best on the field, to me, he's got to be one of your 11. And so is Christian Gray, because Christian Gray has, like you said, it has star written all over him, just like Benjamin Morrison did coming in. And so
what a luxury for this team to have, though. I mean,
it's so hard to tell those two apart when they're on the field.
My gosh.
Like him and Benjamin, like they look almost like their body types are the same.
Yes.
They move the same. They're instinctive. I mean, it's really hard.
And their number is so close. Like the 9 looks like a 0.
Had the long sleeves, the white sleeves, because I could tell this game I could tell the difference because Christian had the long white sleeves and Benjamin did.
I'm gonna need one of them to change their number. I'm gonna need you to help me out here, fellas.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, they're both wearing their high school numbers.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know that they're going to want to change. Yeah.
Okay.
So
all right, fine.
Talk to Chandra. Like, hey, can you convince Christian to go to a single digit next year? It's really too hard.
2's available. Just go 2.
Yeah. It's really hard to tell him and Benjamin apart. But they played great. Xavier played great. I mean, they asked him to play center field a lot in this game to protect against the deep ball, and he did. A couple times you could tell the quarterback was looking deep, and he was like, I see number 0 back there, and it just was like, nah, I'm good. I'm not gonna make that throw.
He saw enough film.
He ain't an idiot. That kid he's no idiot. There's no doubt about that. Yeah, I mean, and you could tell they were much more aggressive throwing the ball down the field when they put the 2s in, and Xavier wasn't back there patrolling center field. It's not a coincidence that was the case, but he was good downhill. Yeah, he almost had a couple times where he had almost had picks on batted balls and missed throws. Yeah. He was very good, and DJ Brown was DJ had that really bad quarter against Louisville, and then he had the big miss against Ohio State, which in a lot of ways has defined his season from a perception standpoint. But DJ Brown was a super solid player this year.
Yeah.
And he was exactly that way in the bowl game.
Yeah.
He was just super solid all year, man. And he played well. And then we got to see some of Adon Schuler and Ben Minnick in this game, especially Adon. And that was good to see because I thought Adon played pretty well in the game. He got beat in coverage once, but overall he was very active, flew around. I thought Adon did some really nice things in the game, and I thought tackled pretty well for the most part. But just the movement stuff is what you saw that you liked, and I thought Ben Minnick is looked every bit as athletic as you kind of hoped he would be.
Sure,
and it was really good to see. It was really good to see. But Adon's a good looking player, man. And he did some good things in that number 2 role. So overall, the secondary was one of the best secondaries all season, and they played exactly like that in the bowl game. Just completely shut down the starting offense from throwing the football.
Oh my gosh, yeah, no doubt about it.
Because all those yards at the end of the game, of that 85 you talked about in the fourth, it was all passing.
Yes, there was not one rush yard in the fourth quarter. It was all passing yards. Yeah. So
I'm actually going to look at what you said. You had the fourth quarter stats, right? So I'm looking at it now. They they had 3 carries for 0 yards rushing in the fourth quarter.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, they went 7 of 10 throwing for 85 yards because they had the one receiver pass that they had in the game too.
And Notre Dame had 102 rush yards in the fourth quarter.
I know, right?
Almost 8 yards a carry.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, Notre Dame had 135 yards of offense in the fourth quarter, which is not too far off of what Oregon State had the entire game, 197.
Yeah.
So an absolute butt kicking. But I thought the secondary played very well. I mean, and the thing is, that's what allows them to do all the things they do up front, is
Right.
because they can just come out and play cover one and say, you cover that guy, and you cover that guy, and you have no chance. And even some of the completions they did have were like against really tight coverage, and it's just like it's almost like when Benjamin gives up a completion, you're like, whoa, they just caught a pass on him. Like every guy gives up catches, but it's just so rare that you're just like, whoa, they gave up a completion. And then you almost kind of convince yourself he didn't play well because he gave up a completion. And it's like they completed 2 passes on him, struggling. That's how locked down they were this year. It was almost like if they gave up 2 or 3 completions, you're just thinking they're terrible. When in reality, that's what every other cornerback does. And boy, they're really excellent.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much to be excited about. Obviously, we're talking about this game, but there's so much to be excited about moving forward in 24 because the defense isn't going to look that much different than what you saw on Friday afternoon when they line up on August, whatever it is, in College Station. Like, it's not going to look that much different. That's the thing. So, yeah, there's a lot to be excited about with this defense. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, no doubt.
Very
so
excited
great finish to the season for what was an otherwise great performance from this defense. This was
doubt.
without question the best defense Notre Dame has had since 2012.
Oh yeah, and it has a chance to be better next year, which is scary.
It really does.
I mean,
At least more dynamic.
Yeah.
Like maybe they might give up some more big plays. I mean, we'll see.
But they have a chance. But I mean,
well, actually, let's hold on to that because that'll be the final thing that we discuss is going to be because of next year because they got some big news. So that's it for the breakdown, Vince. Why don't you go and transition us over to the next one?
Hey, make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button, that notification bell. Log on, boards.irishbreakdown.com, folks. There's tons of good stuff over there. There's going to be intel. Also, Ryan's going to be headed down to the Army All-American Bowl game, I believe, tomorrow. So we're going to start seeing and we're going to be inundated with, stories and intel with recruiting and all that fun stuff. So make sure you get on the boards, folks. There's going to be a lot of good stuff. And even though it's the off season for Notre Dame football, it's never an off season at Irish Breakdown. Okay. So make sure you guys stay locked in because we got all the good stuff for you. All right. We have one more topic to discuss. And that is the return or the announced return of Xavier Watts, the Bronco Nagurski Award winner, best player,
unanimous All-American,
has decided he's not done yet at the University of Notre Dame. He's coming back for another year. I mean, how could you not be excited? Like we kind of knew this was probably coming, but at the same time, it's great to get that final, just that push across that says, yes, he's coming back. They did it in a really cool fashion with Fighting Irish Media and really played off the Sun Bowl and all of that. And then you got to see his highlights and it's just like, okay, let's go. Like this, you want to talk about the final piece of a potentially dominating defense in 24. Just got that from Xavier Watts and the fact that he's coming back. Yeah. I'm so excited right now.
Well, if you want some context,
please, I always do.
Notre Dame has had a lot of consensus All-Americans over the years, including Kyle Hamilton not that long ago. But here's the list of the unanimous All-Americans they've had in the last 10 plus years. Xavier Watts, Joe Alt, Jeremiah Wusu-Koramoah, Quentin Nelson, Manti Te'o, Golden Tate, Shane Walton, Aaron Taylor, Chris Zorich, Michael Stonebreaker, Rocket Ismail, Todd Light, Tim Brown. From 1987 on, that's it. Unanimous All-Americans.
That's kind of a who's who of Notre Dame football lore, by the way.
You know what you don't hear in there, and you won't hear going all the way back because they've had 39. You know what you won't hear on any of those? No safeties.
Oh, wow. He's the only safety.
Never had a safety be a unanimous All-American.
Wow.
He's the first one. Now, again, remember the game has changed. I don't know that they necessarily had safeties back in the 20s and 30s and 40s, right?
Fair enough.
But, yes, because the other ones, Shane Walton, Todd Light were other one, right? Those were corners. They were corners. First unanimous All-American safety in Notre Dame history. When you've done something that's never been done at Notre Dame,
that's saying something. Holy cow.
And just in the last 10, 12 years, they've had Harrison Smith, they had Kyle Hamilton, they had Alohi Gilman. It's impressive.
Yeah, it is. Oh my gosh. That I honestly didn't know that. That's actually some good information I did not know coming out of this, but
that's why I pay me the big bucks, Vince.
That's why I pay me. That's fantastic. That might be the best thing you've said all day. That was really funny.
I don't know how to take that comment, Vince.
That was great. That was really funny to me. I don't know why, but it was really funny to me. That was great. No, but when I saw the video, which by the way was so great. Like that video was awesome. He gets out the treasure map and it's got a big X on it and the whole thing. And he's got unfinished business and all of this. And it's like, there's plenty of people out there be like, what unfinished business do you have?
Right.
Like, on the football field? Like, what? You're the best defensive player in the country.
Says everyone that doesn't know Xavier.
Exactly. 100% agreed. Like, which is even better.
It's one of those, tell me you don't know anything about Xavier Watts without telling me I know nothing about Xavier Watts, right?
Correct.
Because
correct.
That's just not what fuels him.
Yeah.
The individual stuff is not what fuels him. I mean, I talked to somebody close to him when this process first began. And this person I was talking to was kind of thinking he wanted him to leave. And he said he was talking to Xavier, and Xavier goes, I understand the desire to get into the NFL and get to your second contract, and I'm sympathetic to all that. He goes, but when I go, I want to be as ready as I possibly can be, so that when I do get to that second contract, I'm a better player to maximize the vet. So he's talking about what's better, to get to your second contract quicker or to get to your second contract as the better player. And he understood financially, practically, in every way that I can be better. I will be better. I want to be better. On top of the fact that there's an attraction of getting his master's. There's the attraction of going out and playing for a championship. That's the other thing. And kind of finishing well. And to your point, Vince, on the field, and I've made this point too. Look, guys, let's not forget Todd Light was a unanimous All-American in 1989, right? And he did that in a year where he had 8 interceptions. He was brilliant that year. But the next year, he only had 2 interceptions because people didn't throw at him. But he was still a consensus All-American and went on to be the number 5 draft pick in the NFL. So it's not like his game took a step back, even though he wasn't a unanimous All-American like he was in 1989. He was still a great player, and he was still a high draft pick. And so there's still a lot for Xavier to improve upon with his game. There's still a lot of areas where he can improve his game. Is it improving by astronomical way? No. And I actually thought he kind of showed a little bit of that against Oregon State fans because he was under control, took good angles with football. There's and if anyone that knows Xavier is going to probably, I'll be willing to bet you $20 that when Xavier spends time thinking about 2023, he's not going to think about the USC picks, the fumble return for a touchdown. He's not going to be thinking about the pick against NC State, the 2 picks against Pitt. He's going to be thinking about that missed tackle against Ohio State on the touchdown run. He's going to be thinking about that one time against Clemson. He did not the pick he had where he ran the ball back to the 2 and set the offense up. He's going to be thinking that one time I didn't properly drive on the route and let that guy catch that ball in front of me. That one time I didn't take the right angle to this route. That's the kind of football player Xavier Watts is.
Right.
Is that just I want to be the greatest, and because I know my team needs me to be that for us to go out there and achieve what we want to achieve. And getting him back is huge, Vince, just practically speaking, because if you lose him, your secondary looks really shaky next year.
Oh yeah, because you get 2 brand new safeties is what you
right, and none of them will have played much football at all, and you'd have been forced to go to the portal. Now, part of the reason that Notre Dame didn't go look hard at the portal is because they've known Xavier's coming back for a couple weeks now. We've been hinting about it as best we can without giving the kids' moment away, but barring things changing, that kind of thing. But they've known now for a couple weeks that he's coming back, which is why they did the thing down in Texas with him doing the video down in Texas before the game, creating that video of him coming back. So that's partly why you haven't heard a lot of safeties mentioned in the portal. And so I think they're going to see how the spring goes and then maybe go into the portal after the spring if they need another one. But I'm really curious to kind of see what they do to fill out that depth chart. But you're going to see him and a Don Schuler next year, I think, side by side. As long as Ben Minnick can stay healthy, he'll have a chance to be part of that rotation. They love Ben Minnick as well. He's so athletic. He has to stay healthy.
Yeah.
Like that's the big thing for Ben. He got hurt in the spring. He was banged up in fall camp this year. But when he's healthy, man, the thing that people tell you is that kid can flat out run, man. Like the people I talk to around Notre Dame, like that kid is instinctive. Because like we think of Ben Minnick, and let's be honest, because of the way he looks, there's going to be he's a heady and he's smart and he's just a good. Yeah, that may be true, but that kid can freaking run.
Yeah,
and those two kids are gonna be players. If Luke Talich comes back healthy, which they're hoping he will, he's a guy that they like as well. But there's gonna have to be some thought process to, do you convince Clarence Lewis to come back and move him to safety to get some depth there? I mean, that's something I would do because we saw in the game on Friday again, like Clarence Lewis just can't cover like you need a cornerback to cover.
Yeah,
just can't. But you put him at safety, and all of a sudden his skill set, to me, gets maximized on the kind of player he could be. But you lose Xavier Watts, and all of a sudden the back end of your defense looks really questionable for next season. Really questionable.
Right. And you've got, obviously an influx of freshmen coming in, but do you really want to hang your hat on what could be a top 5 defense next year on true freshmen? I mean, that's a lot to put on the shoulders of a true freshman. Right. So
especially one like Bronte Johnson, who's undersized and is going to probably need some time in the weight room and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know that Kennedy Urlacher or Tabor have any power guys that you necessarily want to have to put on the field as freshmen. Now, if somebody earns it, great.
Yeah, right.
But to your point, Vince, you're not talking about earning it. You're talking about somebody would have had to play.
Correct. You have to. Like like remember the defensive line 3-4 years ago where they had to play these true freshmen.
Right. Kurt Hinish and Myron Tungaloa. I mean, maybe they would have earned it anyway. But
correct,
they had to play no matter what. They had
to. Now they're getting to the point in a lot of different positions where if you're good, you're going to play, but it's not a playing out of need situation. And they don't want to put themselves into that position at the safety position either. So that's kind of where they're at with things. And a lot is going to have to go right for them not to have to go to the portal, I think. Xavier Watts coming back is one of those things. And then the injury bug would be the next set of things.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
right. So big news for the Notre Dame defense, and now you've got impact players up front. You've got an impact player on the outside, impact player in the back third. You don't have an impact player at linebacker right now, but you've got potential to have impact linebackers at linebacker.
Yeah,
players at linebacker, whether it's Drake Bowen, Jalen Sneed, Jack Kaiser in certain roles. Like I said, like there's this thing with Jack Kaiser. It's kind of like somebody on the board is like, I don't want him to play, come back. And I'm like, I kind of understand where he's coming from. His fear is my fear. And I kind of hint about this. Like my fear with Jack coming back is that Golden's going to just kind of turn him into something that he's not, which is a full-time 50+ per game inside linebacker. And that's not Jack's game. It's put him there at times, but move him around, let him attack, use his speed, not try to turn him into a full-time inside linebacker. As long as they avoid that, there's a ton of value to a guy like Jack Larson, Jack Kaiser coming back, as long as you use him correctly. But now it's about, okay, and it's great to have a leader in the room to help out, bring along Jalen Sneed and Drake Bowen and Kingston Viliama-Asa and Jaden Alsbury and those guys, Preston Zinner. So there's going to be some talent there. You just need to see who's going to step up and be that guy. But Xavier coming back was that final offseason piece to this Notre Dame defense really taking a jump next year and being even more dynamic than it was this year. Because I think Benjamin Morrison next year is going to be insane. Because I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I'll bet you he's disappointed or realizing how his game can get a lot better, which is kind of scary because he was still really good this year. It just maybe wasn't as good as he should have been this season, so man, you start thinking about this secondary events with Christian Gray and Jaden Mickey. And, obviously we already talked about Benjamin and the young talent safety, Schuler and Minnick. If they can just get those young kids ready to play now with a Xavier coming back, you've got a chance to be, I'll say this, you're going to be more athletic in the secondary next year. with Adon, and if it's Adon and Ben, with all due respect to DJ Brown and Ramon Henderson, it's going to be more athletic and a faster group. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, sure, no doubt, no
So,
doubt.
it's exciting.
Yeah, very exciting. So Brian, we got a few super chats that we need to get to.
Let's do it, man. Yeah,
my man
Tommy D. What's up, buddy?
Nice, good time, Tommy Real Estate Team. Thank you so much for
Tommy. If you're in the Nashville area, definitely look up Tommy Davidson. You definitely want to. That's my guy. Yeah,
all right,
because that's actually he's got a great real estate team down there. There's no doubt about it.
That's awesome.
I believe he's in Nashville. I'm actually going to text him right now.
It says, Happy New Year. Thanks for giving us the best ND football content. Tommy, you're welcome.
Yeah, I appreciate you, man. Tommy is
awesome.
I've known Tommy since I really got on the beat. He actually took me out to dinner when went down for the Music City Bowl.
Oh, okay.
Took me out to dinner. Showed me the city of Nashville a little bit. So my little tour of Nashville is because my guy Tommy. Yep. So appreciate you, buddy. Very, very much.
Jim Halloran, thank you very much for the super chat. Really appreciate it. Happy New Year and happy belated birthday, Vince. You the man, Jim. Thank you very much.
So Tommy's in the Nashville, Murfreesboro area. So that's where Tommy is. So if you're looking to buy a house, hit up my guy.
He says, thanks for all you do. Go Irish. Thanks, Jim.
Jim, appreciate you, man. And happy belated birthday to Vince. I didn't get to wish him a happy birthday on the day of the game on the show.
Right.
But because of that, I am going to implement a no singing policy for my staff.
So you obviously listened to the show.
That was horrible. I was like, what is this? There were dogs in El Paso howling around the hotel because they could hear that stuff. That was so terrible. But yes, happy belated birthday.
Oh, it's funny though.
You're still not in the fours yet, right? You got 1 year away, or?
Oh God, I wish. I'm 43.
Really?
Yeah.
I could have swore I thought you were 38.
I'll take it
so well.
I
met one of our subscribers was at the show or at the show. By the way, that was such a great time, man.
It looked like I saw the picture you posted.
So much fun.
Yeah.
I was only going to be there for like a couple hours because I was just really tired.
Yeah.
And I was there for like 5.5 hours, 5 hours, almost 5 hours. So much fun. But one of the guys showed up. This guy Melvin showed up with his girlfriend. They're very sweet people. But I was talking to Melvin, and we were kind of talking about style and stuff. And I was like, well, I'm a little older than you. And he goes, no, you're not. And I said, well, how old are you? Thinking he was going to say, like, he was thinking I'm like in my 30s because I get that sometimes. And he's like, I'm 51. And I was like, what? Like, dude, you've aged very well. Your parents gave you some good genes, man.
Like a fine wine.
Yes. I was like, get out of here. That's how Vince is, Vince. You look a lot younger than you are.
I'll take it.
So
I'll take it.
Yeah, but appreciate you, Jim, very much, buddy.
All right. Todd Bramey.
That's Todd. Yeah.
Todd Bramey 4. Thanks for the super chat. Really appreciate it. One thing we know is this staff under Freeman can make a great game plan. Next step is adjusting on the fly without going in the locker room.
Offensively, sure. Yeah. I mean, there's a need to be able to do a little better job adjusting on the fly in game. Certainly.
Charlie Weiss's last belt loop. Thanks, Charlie, for the super chat. Freeman era is special. Gator Bowl, Sun Bowl, Natty, future's bright.
Yeah, it really is, man. I'm excited about it. I mean, look, even after the struggles, I still said I think this team wins a title in the next 3 to 5 years. I do, because I said it the thing the other day. There's just so much talent in the younger classes, and we saw a little bit of it in the game. I mean, they didn't even play great, honestly.
Right.
Like this wasn't like there was nobody that had like that. Oh my gosh, that all world, holy moly, what a game performance. I mean, Jadarian was good. Faison was good, but there, you know what I mean? Like there was nobody that was just like, oh my gosh, it just was, everybody was just way, it was just way better. And they were just way better than all the kids Oregon State had.
Yeah.
And you're just like, good night.
Like it was so much fun to watch.
Yes, it was. Yeah. Yes, it was. I'm excited about what the future holds. And again, look, I'm much higher on Jared Parker than others. I thought he did a lot of good things this year. You don't set the scoring record they did, 9 games of 40 points or more. The next closest ever was 6.
Right.
Even if you take away all the defensive, and it was still 6. And if you take those away from all the other teams, it's still the record. You don't score 39 points a game, 39.2 points a game in spite of your OC.
Right.
There's some moments this year where the offensive coordinator didn't need to do. That's fine. It's been true for a long time. But the reality is even me, who was much higher on Jared Parker than others, you still got a big upgrade in Mike Denbrock.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And so there's a lot to be excited about if they can convince Al Golden to stay. And if I'm Marcus Freeman, I'm going to say, guys, I unless you're getting a head coaching job, give me one more year together.
Yeah.
Because we can be special if you guys this next year's team can be special. So if you can keep Mickens and keep Coach McCullough and the guys that you want to keep, you know what I mean? I think that's kind of everybody that's still there. That wasn't like a backhanded, like except for that one guy that I'm hoping he fires. That's already happened. He's already done that.
It's already done.
You know?
Yeah.
Done deal.
His replacement already did a great job in game 1.
Absolutely did. So it's exciting, man. It really is exciting.
Aiden Benami, thank you very much for the super chat. Can you imagine a player picking up Brian Kelly after a touchdown?
I think we've seen that before. I mean,
Sure,
I get where he's coming from, but look, there were guys that liked Brian Kelly, and even if you don't like him, you're in the middle of a game and you're winning, you're going to be fired up about that.
Sure.
But I get the point. But there's definitely more of a connection with Coach Freeman.
Well, he's more of a player's coach than
Right.
BK was. I mean, we can appreciate
Right.
that. I mean, that just is that. But that's
part of
just
that's
the style.
generational. I mean, Brian
and
Kelly
that's
was
generational
like
too.
57, 58 years old. Like I wouldn't
Right.
want to hurt him. He's
Marcus
a little, and
Freeman's
he's also a little
30s.
guy.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it's where Freeman's kind of like he's as big as you are. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
yeah. I mean
and he's in his 30s. He's
right.
Not only is he in great shape, but he's in his 30s.
I mean, there's guys still playing. His still linebackers in the NFL playing at his age.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I mean, yeah, I get it. But I think the point behind it, I'm with you on, Iden, is like there is a. I mean, it's easier for him to when the team is prepared correctly, it's easier for this team to get up and play emotionally than the other team, which is partly why when they did show up this year, they were so much more dominant than they've been in a long time. Like Vince, the game against I'm trying to think of this right now. The game against Duke was the only win they had all year where they scored less than 40 points in a game. That's it. They scored 42, 56, 45, 41, 48, 58, 45, 56, and 40 in their other 9 wins. Their closest win outside of the Duke game was 28 points against USC. No, 21 against NC State. So of their other 9, like the Duke game was 7, the rest of their wins were by 39, 53, 21, 24, 28, 51, 38, 33, and 32. They didn't just win game. Like, what was one of the biggest knocks against? You got to beat the teams you're supposed to beat.
Right.
More because that's what Kelly. They didn't just beat the teams they were supposed to beat this year. They annihilated them. And that's like, and if you go back to last year, the BC game was 44-0. Right? I mean, so this team went out and when he gets them ready, there was 2 games this year really where they just weren't ready to play. And that's Louisville and Clemson. They were ready to play against Ohio State. They just didn't execute in the money moments. That on either side of the ball. That's the difference. But they played hard against Ohio State. That was a great football game until the end. And a couple plays here and there where like I said, you're the quarterback. It's 4th and 1. You sacrifice your body to get the first down. I'm sorry. I'll never change my opinion on that. Outside of a couple things like that, those kids played their butts off in that game. They just didn't execute. That happens. It happens. Just like Ohio State didn't execute against Michigan. But, I mean, when they came out this year, Vince, and again, a lot of these games were not – they blew a team away late. Like it was, 28-0 at halftime at Navy. Tennessee State was like 35-3 at halftime.
Right.
NC State was a 10-point game at halftime. Central Michigan was 17, something like that. USC game was 24-6 at halftime. Pitt was a 20. What was the Pitt game at halftime? I mean, it was a 3-score game. Let me look this up. It was 17-0 at halftime of the Pitt game. Let's see here. Let's go down the rest. I mean, so the point being, Vince, these were not competitive football games that they were playing in for the most part. Wake Forest was 17-7 at halftime, 10-point lead at halftime. It was 28-16 against Stanford at halftime. I mean, they had double-digit leads at halftime of all these games. It wasn't just and they actually had a 10-0 lead against Duke at halftime and blew it in the second half. I mean, so like it wasn't like it was a close game for 4 quarters and then they pulled away late. Like they annihilated people this year. And if you can just fix those couple games and they'll finish against Ohio State and beat those other 2, man, I'm excited about next year. I really am.
No, how could you not be? How could you not be? Joe Pompity. What's up, Joe? Taking a break from baseball practice. I like it. Thanks for the super chat. Hey, fellas, great show. Happy New Year. Still enjoying this win. Can't wait for next season. I think this team is ready to start a roll. Go
I agree.
Irish.
Agree, man. Just like we was talking about Joe, man. I can't wait for this team. This is going to be a fun off. And that's why I'm really happy about how the game ended. Because I am excited about next year's team.
Right.
And I'm glad the season ended in a way that's going to allow people to feel it's okay to be excited about next year.
And you can enjoy this win for a while too. You can you can kind of
bask in it.
Bask in the win and the
let it marinate a little bit,
yeah.
baby. Let it marinate. All right. Exactly. Let it marinate. Biggest blowout win in Notre Dame history.
Yeah.
History.
Enjoy it. It's okay.
Right. Doesn't mean everything was perfect.
No.
Things got to get better, but
show me a perfect football game and I will show you how you're wrong.
Well, even a perfect, I mean, I can show you perfect seasons from a winning and losing standpoint, right? But like, it's okay. We don't have to do this, throw the baby out with the bathwater thing. We can say, look, this got to get better. That's got to get better. That's got to get better. And still say they took a step this year. And the way they finished means the step was bigger than I would have told you it was a month ago. That's the exciting thing about
100%. Andy Milton fan, thanks for the super chat. Notre Dame's 23 schedule was the hardest since when?
2017, easily it was 2017 was harder by far. They played 8 ranked teams that year and like 10 plus win teams that year. They played the national runners up. Georgia was better than Ohio State this year. Georgia that year was better than Ohio State this year. So yeah, that was a much tougher schedule. But this season, well, last year's schedule was similar to this one. I would say this one's harder, but last year they had an underratedly tough schedule. So partly because people still don't respect how good Marshall was last year. But yeah, but this is still a tougher schedule than last year's, in my opinion. Still a tougher schedule than last year's. So, but yeah, it was, and yeah, it was.
Trevor Rocket, thank you very much for the super chat. Happy New Year Eve, lads. Glad to see the boys go out and dominate at times and get win number 10. Yes, Brian and Vince, thank you for everything. God bless you guys and all the boys at IB. Lindsay Tuff.
Appreciate you, Trevor. Hope you guys are doing very well. Have a happy New Year. I don't know how you guys celebrated up in Canada, but however it is, my friend, enjoy it. I know I'll be sitting at home chilling.
Me too.
Tonight. I'm not a New Year's Eve go out and party guy. I'm just chill, relax.
We're gonna go out and get some dinner, but only because every one of my children is gone.
That's nice.
So we're gonna take advantage. It has nothing to do with it being New Year's Eve, but like they're gone.
Yeah, but your guys are going out like early. You guys are going like in an hour.
Like in an hour. Yeah, that's right. We're not going out with the crazy.
Y'all are like doing old people dinner.
Yes, we are.
Yeah,
yes,
nothing wrong with that. I'm making fettuccine Alfredo tonight at home, so I'm excited about that. Yeah, man.
We're hitting up the old stomping ground for me, Bonefish Grill.
There you go. Hey, I told you I thought it was closed down. It was the building before was something new.
Oh,
I was looking at the wrong building.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Hey, swing by. I have a gift card for a Bonefish Grill. Swing by.
I may have to do that.
Yeah.
Charlie Weiss's last belt loop. Thanks, Charlie, for another super chat. I know the season just ended, but is Freeman turning the perception of Notre Dame around, in your opinion? Back-to-back bowl wins, better recruiting. What needs to be done to get to that next level? Develop?
Well, I mean, the perception is changing to a degree. That's partly why they're recruiting so well.
Sure.
Is because the perception is changing. Is it completely changed? No, because you still got to win the big games.
Right.
That's the next step is to beat Ohio State. Don't just almost beat Ohio State. Beat Georgia. Don't almost beat Georgia, which they've done twice now.
Right.
It's win more of those games. Yeah, you beat Clemson. That's great. But now they've got you, right? They got the most recent one. It's win those big games. And part of it's development. Part of it's developing the culture. I think that's the one biggest unknown with Coach Freeman is, can he develop the culture needed to go through an entire season unscathed and then win? Because look, here's the deal. Notre Dame's got to win 4 games to win a title, right? They got to win the first round game, quarters, semis, and the title game.
Yeah.
Right. So it's going to take a lot more than just that. Because like the way you could kind of get 2 favorable matchups and win a championship now.
Sure.
Right. Unless you're just better than everybody else. Now it's 4. and you're going to have to beat somebody that you don't match up great against.
Sure. And it's a lot of travel too.
Right.
I mean, you might host the first round, but then you're going to have to travel to like 3 different bowl games, and it's going to be a whole thing. There's going to be a lot.
Now it's
not
that
just
way
on
for
the
everybody,
field, but yeah,
right. But for Notre Dame, none of those games are going to be in Indianapolis or Detroit. They're going to be south or west or southwest. And so there's a culture that is needed still to be enhanced in a way where this team can overcome those things and be more consistent, energy-wise, emotional-wise, focus-wise, that can dig deep a little bit more than they did against Ohio State, Louisville, or Clemson, or Stanford, or USC last year, Stanford last year, Marshall last year, Ohio State last year.
Right.
And then, of course, continue to build up the talent. It's getting there, but it's not quite there everywhere yet. And we'll talk about that as we dive into when we get in the offseason. Just we'll go position by position over during the next couple of weeks, where they are and where they need to get to and all that stuff. But they're there talent-wise at more positions than they've been since Lou Holtz was the head coach. I'm confident saying, especially with the incoming, CJ Carr coming in and Riley Leonard coming in at quarterback. I mean, you lose Sam Hartman and you replace him with Riley Leonard and CJ Carr, right? Like, your quarterback room is better.
Yeah.
Your running back room, you lose Audric and you might lose Devin Ford, but you're going to replace him with Kedron and Aeneas. Right? Like you lose Rico Flores, you lose Tobias, you lose Tyree. Those are losses. You're replacing them with Cam Williams, Chris Mitchell, Bo Collins, Micah Gilbert, and Logan Saldate. They're going to be fine.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? And that's the exciting thing about it is, you're losing Alt and Fisher and Zeke Correll, but you're going to insert Jagasol into the lineup and Tosh Baker. You welcome Gerby Lambert and Styles Prescott and Peter Jones and Anthony. I mean, that's the exciting part, and I mean, it wasn't that long ago where when Notre Dame would lose a starting corner, you'd almost like kind of get a little bit like, well, next year's going to suck because they lost a good corner.
Yeah.
And now it's just like
reload.
The VP of the Cam Hart is I got to tell him, hey man, I don't know about better, but still pretty good. But the point is you're not pulling that out of your, what, Vince.
Correct.
There's reason to have that belief.
Right.
Because how good Christian Gray can be. And it's an exciting place to be, man. It really is. But it's just development's part of it. The culture's part of it. Making sure your coaching staff is where it needs to be. And he took a big step towards that this offseason by getting Mike Denbrock.
No doubt. No doubt. I think he made in the coaching world, I feel like he made a splash in that regard.
And not just because it's Mike Denbrock, but what they're willing to pay.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. And the manner in which they went out and did it, they identified their guy, they went after him, and they made it happen. Like that means something. That means something. So we'll see.
Agree, buddy. Last couple, Vince.
All right, Caesar.
Wrap up our final 2023 show.
I know. Caesar, thanks for the super chat. Really appreciate you. Greetings from the LA area. Wish you, Brian, Vince, and everyone a wonderful 2024. IB is awesome.
So are you, man. My man. Cesar's been around for a while, so we appreciate you very, very much, man.
Appreciate
you very much. And then this is Vince's guy, just your ordinary Joe.
Yes, he goes. I know
great
this
way to end it. Great way to end it.
Thanks for the super chat, Joe. Appreciate it very much. I know this isn't a mailbag, but had to send this. Any IB host, whoever finds himself in my neck of the Floridian woods, is hereby entitled to claim his dinner on me as well. I owe you guys my sanity. I am deeply, deeply grateful. I'm going to be in Florida in a couple of weeks, Joe, but I don't know if I'm going to be in your neck of the woods. So
connect with him.
We'll see.
Joe, shoot Vince a DM or an email or something, and you guys can see.
I'm going to be in like the Panhandle area. So.
But Joe, I love Joe, man. Remember the game he showed up to the tailgate?
Oh, yeah.
He's got an IB shirt on, and he pulls his IB shirt up. He's got another IB shirt on. That's my man right there, baby.
Oh, it's fantastic. How could I forget? How could I forget? That was awesome.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Well, Joe, we appreciate you, buddy, very, 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 very much. And we're going to wrap this show up with just a huge thank you.
Yes.
Just Vince and I are going to have some business conversations, and I'm going to share some things with him that just shows how much we love y'all and how supportive you all have been to what we're doing at Irish Breakdown. I can't say enough how in this, the get together on Thursday showed that this just isn't a collection of Notre Dame fans. This is a community of Notre Dame fans because we care about each other. We pray for each other. I can't tell how many times I've had people who, when they see me struggling, hey man, I saw you were, tired today. Make sure you're getting rest. Make sure you take care of yourself. We love you, and just those type of things mean the absolute world to me. More than, hey, football. Oh, great. Thank you. I've been blessed. But just the people care about you in a way beyond just that. And I hope you guys know how much you mean to me. And I truly mean that. It's just this IB Nation community has gone so beyond what I thought it was going to be. And I'm so honored to have you all as part of that, because otherwise it's just two dudes talking to themselves, and that's all that it is. And you all make it that way. And I can't wait for 2024. I really can't. And of course I have my guy beside me, and I appreciate you so much, buddy, and this whole team. But I can't wait for this year. But you all have made it. This was a rough year for me in a lot of ways, personally, and just my health and some different things going on. And having all of you and the thoughts and the prayers and concern, it helps me get through it, and it got me through it. And I just want to thank you all very, very much for that. And you are truly a blessing. That's not just a end of the New Year's feeling emotional. It is, Vince will tell you, from the bottom of my heart, I just want to thank you all so incredibly much, from myself and this whole team, because you are an amazing group of people. And it's not just football. It is a brotherhood, and I mean that in a bigger sense, because we have ladies in our chat, and I just, I can't tell you how much y'all mean to me. You really, really, really do. And I know I don't always show it enough, and all those type of things, but even when I'm frustrated or upset about something, please know it's just, I'm an emotional guy, but I so thankful for all of you. I really am. And I hope that you all stick with us for another amazing year.
Yeah.
At Irish Breakdown.
It's going to be a great one. This is like a second family. I'm not going to go down the road too far, but everybody knows that I lost my dad this year, and being on the show and being around, obviously, my actual human family, but then my IB family is it was uplifting. It really was. It was so helpful. And I'm not just saying that. It was a lot of the texts that I got, or the DMs, or all of that was just, it was unbelievable. And that's because of the great, family that we've built here, and that's all you guys, and I never would have thought that was possible as we were
not
setting
like
this
this
thing up. Not like this.
Not
no
like
way.
this. We knew the content was going to be good, and we would have supporters and all that. I mean, just, subscribers and, people that listen, but it's just gone. It's gone so beyond that, and it truly is a community, a family, and it is awesome. It is awesome.
Yep. So really appreciate it, everybody. So thanks everybody for hanging in there with us all year, and we're going to be back and better than ever next year. And 24 is going to be one heck of a year, not only for all of us and IB and Notre Dame. It's going to be awesome, man. I'm super excited about it, and ready to jump in with both feet with the IB family and everybody. So make sure you stick with us, everybody. Hit that like button, the subscribe button, all of those fun things, and we'll keep you up to date. We will keep you up to date, and make sure you hit the boards.irishbreakdown.com, and then irishbreakdown.com as well, with all the articles and all the fun stuff over there too. So guys, this is just the beginning. We're going at it. We're going to keep giving you our best, and just keep listening. We really appreciate you guys all being here. So for Brian, I'm Vince. Happy New Year to everybody out there, and we'll see you next time in 2024.
Happy New Year. Go Irish.